It is our quarterly review meeting for the Town of Fairfield Board of Finance. Would everybody please rise? We are at the golf course, and I'll explain that in a moment. For right now, I'm going to ask Mr. Craig Curley, who's the head of the Clubhouse Building Committee, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. And do we have a flag?
No.
Outside.
Yeah, we got the pole right outside.
Okay, let's face outside.
So I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now, if everyone would please be seated for a second. I think I can say without fear of being corrected, in probably the 350-year history of the town, this might be the first Board of Finance meeting that's been held in a bar.
There's been illegal records.
We can check the records. But we are here at Smith Richardson Golf Course because we're going to hear a presentation from the Clubhouse Building Committee this evening. We're not voting, and this is not a voting item this evening, but the first thing we're going to do is go on a tour of the facility, see what the current facility looks like, as well as some of the planned designs for the new facility. Then we're going to come back to the table, and we're going to have our quarterly meeting, at which point the chairman and vice chairman of the building committee, and whomever they deem appropriate, will present to us where we stand right now in the process of putting together new clubhouse plans. Do any board members have any questions at this point? Seeing none, we're going to go to our first agenda item, which will be the tour of the facility. Unfortunately, Fair TV cannot follow us on this tour, so we will be back for the second agenda item right after the tours. Everyone set? Great. Thank you. Everybody set? We're going to bring the tour to conclusion. I'd like to thank the members of the Golf Clubhouse Commission for the tour, as well as the Golf Pro, Mr. Alexander, and Mr. Calabrese for helping set that up. As I indicated earlier, tonight is our quarterly meeting, going through the results of the first quarter of the fiscal year. That would be from July through September. It's also the night we're going to discuss the clubhouse and the renovation or the rebuild project that has been proposed. We will not be voting on that tonight. That vote will come in the future after it goes before the Board of Selectmen. I think that's due in December, as I recall, December 2nd by the Board of Selectmen, which is next week. They're doing this week, aren't they?
They're meeting next week for information. They're voting on it in January.
They're voting on it in January, so it won't be back to us until after the first of the year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for the clarification. So this evening, on our quarterly agenda is to receive the tour, which we have done. We're going to review the current state of the OPEB and town pension funds. We're going to hear an update on the clubhouse project. We're going to hear from the Board of Education, and then we're going to hear from the town, and then we're going to hear, that's on the first quarter financial results, and then we'll hear a bit more about the pile cleanup. I might actually ask that we take the Board of Education, that we take this out of order in order to get them out of here. There's no sense for them to wait later. So we might hear them just before the golf clubhouse, if that's okay with everybody. Probably not with the golf clubhouse, but can't make everybody happy. So let's review the current status of the town's pension and OPEB funds. I think Mr. Vahey is here. Welcome, Brian. Thank you for being here tonight.
Brian, if you could take the further seat over. Thank you.
And I'll turn it over to you. We have our standard quarterly reports
Yes.
from the pension board. Thank you.
So I'm referencing the town of Fairfield one, not the OPEB. It's as of the end of September. You can see that we're at $393 million on, well, rounding up to 392. down slightly from the end of August, primarily because we needed a source of funds to make payments. And if you look to returns, which are on the last page, they were positive in the month. I will say that, yeah, why don't we speak next, which should be soon, right? Because the next quarterly, they're kind of bunched up here at the end of the year.
It'll be, yeah, January.
Won't be as rosy. But,
Do we know where we stand now, Brian, compared?
no, well,
Year to date?
I get the individual, we all get the individual reports from each one of the managers, so actually, real estate's fine. I just saw the some of the equity numbers come through, which, if you use a rough thumb rule of 60% of the portfolio is equity related, and just cuff it with a 6 or 7% because yeah, that's probably a good thumb rule. So probably down 3 or 4%.
So you believe we're down 3 or 4% from this one?
Just from the equities, but then, you've got to offset that with what the fixed income and real estate guys have done. But I would say on a worst case scenario, which, we're not, we'll see where things are headed.
But as of right now, we're not near the 7%, given what's going on in the markets right now, right?
No, we're the other side of the cycle. But, we're speaking to this right now. Last 12 months, like I said, north of the 7% benchmark. Quite honestly, for all the periods listed there, which is great. Moving on to, are there any questions? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Questions?
I have a-
Mrs. Esmond?
We don't have the normal inverse relationship right now between stocks and bonds, do we, or is that still?
Thanks, it's a good question. So the question was that normally, the reason that we find ourselves like in that 60-40 that I spoke of, roughly, of equities to bonds, is because historically speaking, they've moved contango. When one goes up, the other one goes down more or less, and that produces more of a moderated return. It's a nice mix. Unfortunately, because we've had such a massive rally in fixed income, essentially to where rates almost got to zero, that really isn't any way for fixed income to go up anymore. It can only go down as rates go up, and unfortunately, when you have rates going up and the equity market's going down, that whole one zigs while the other zags is not coming to bear. Although I will say that it's interesting to watch the fixed income market. It's not been as, no, I would not say the correlation is perfect like it used to be, but I think our fixed income returns right now are flat down slightly, which is better than down what the equity markets are, like 5 to 6%. So bears watching. If I don't know where things are going to go. Everybody's watching that. I mean, there's not any places we can hide. We have a diversified portfolio, and we'll just see how it all shakes out.
Brian, can you remind us, where do we stand with the experience study? Do we have another one coming up, or are we done with that?
Well, experience studies take place every 5 years.
Right.
So it's definitely not this year. We're having the actuaries come in for a little training session Q&A next our January meeting. But no, I think our experience studies either next year or the year after.
And we don't have any big changes in assumptions year over year. What I'm getting at is, if the markets continue doing what they're doing, which is particularly over the last several months, and we don't get that rate of return this year, our concern could be going into next budget season that the calculation is going to require a higher contribution next year. Is that
No, because you get the blended, you get a 5-year, it actually takes,
Several years for it to
you're
work
going to
through.
get 1/5 of the contribution of whatever it was off of the 7%, so it's, and then
Right.
it goes through, so, actually, you're going to see, it will,
Oh, because one of
I don't want to
the,
get quoted, we're live, we're live here, but I think because of the pretty decent performance of the preceding 5-year cycle is now working its way through, so we're actually probably going to show, it would have an.
right, because one of the bad prior years is going to fall off, be replaced by maybe this year's not a great year, but,
Yeah, if I remember correctly, 2000 and, I don't have it by year here, but we just had 1 year in the preceding 5 where it was sort of like a 0.2, we had 1 year was like a 0% return, but it's bracketed by several fantastic years, so it should be a overall good feedback loop through the calculation.
yep. Any other questions? All right, let's go on to OPEB, thank you.
OPEB's a little bit more simplistic, although
We're getting
I
there.
believe at one of our earlier meetings, they said, when we get to a certain threshold, we can start to branch out into a similar distribution. So we have gone there on the fixed income side. So you can see PIMCO, we've made that transition. Used to just be a Wells thing, so now we're in PIMCO, and it's getting a little bit diversified. And I will say, as we get through the 50 million mark, we'll continue to sort of try and make this portfolio mimic this one. But for now, it is what it is here. It's 44 million. It will continue to grow because just gets straight contributions, and it has its own natural intrinsic growth. Its returns are, depending on where the equity markets are going, are generally higher or lower than OPEB because it's not as diversified. So it's slightly higher in this period because equities were up. So.
Questions from board members related to the OPEB investment? Anybody? And when should we, when are we going to pass that 50 million number? We had 6 million to go?
I want to say, Mr. Mayor, we put in about 6 or 7 million a year, roughly, has been the
That's what I
experience, right?
would've thought.
Annual for OPEB.
Yes.
So next year, give or take?
Yeah, knock on wood with the markets and stuff.
All right. Anybody else? Seeing none, thank you. Thanks, Mr. Page. All right. Does anybody have a problem with us taking number 4 to review the abbreviated Board of Education first quarter fiscal year 19 financial position? Can we have the Board of Education, the Education Administration? Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. And first of all, let me say publicly my congratulations to Mrs. Vitale, who was named the board chair, or voted the board chair last month, or this month. Congratulations or condolences, I don't know. But congratulations, we look forward to working with you. We wish you the best. Everyone, how are you guys?
Good.
Very good. Happy Thanksgiving. Merry Christmas and all that. Let's turn it over to you guys. What's going on with the education budget as we round out the first quarter here?
Mansell, go ahead, let you start. You can talk loud.
Well, being the first quarter report, there's not much we can say with it only being 3 months into the fiscal year and 1 month of school being in session. What we do know, though, is that we have insufficient savings in retirement and turnover.
Insufficient savings.
Insufficient.
By how much do we think?
In total, $850 right now,
$850,000.
correct.
What, can you tell me what number of staff, how much were we off in that?
I
Can I actually just, I might direct you to page 2 at
Oh,
the
yeah.
top. The chart is there.
Yeah.
A couple of the biggest differences this year, we calculated 19 retirements.
Yep.
And we ended up having 13 before the year started. But within that 13, it's the equivalent of 11.4 FTE, which means some of the people were not full-time. So we didn't see the full savings. Then we have 3 more who are also, they are retiring, but they didn't retire before June 30th. They'll be retiring either October, January. They waited to retire a little bit longer. So the total will be 16. So that's short 3, plus, again, some of those were not full-time. The other thing that happened to us, which is, it's actually a good problem, but we are going to need to really study the budget and how we're going to adjust for it, is that we had one of the best retention rates with our teachers this year that we have had in almost a decade. And that's a good problem to have, except that we calculated on our traditional turnover, and we didn't see it. It didn't come to fruition.
Okay, so how are you managing that shortfall?
Well, right now, we're literally going line by line through the budget, looking at anything that, this time of the year, that is changing. You know, utilities could go up, utilities could go down, all those different areas. We're watching everything. I wouldn't say that it's still too early to say that we've actually closed the gap right now. Would you want to add to that, Ms. Munsell?
I think
Yeah.
we're, discussing options.
Is that the only gap you have right now, is that 850?
Well, that does at least allow me to say something positive about an area that usually runs really over this time of the year.
Special ed.
And if you look at the bottom of page 2, under pupil personnel,
Yeah.
about 6 lines down, it says, "The first quarter financial report reflects a positive balance in
Yep.
pupil services of 340. Now, we know that that's not going to maintain for the whole school year. That's the most challenging budget we have, but we have not seen a number like that again in as long as we can kind of remember. Generally, the last 2 years, we've been well over $1 million in the hole, starting almost by the time school starts. So we feel like we're really managing well in that area this year and have a better handle on that. That's going to help offset the other 800-ish.
Now, that's not related to reimbursements from the state. That is purely, we're not incurring those costs.
What we have done is, and I think you'll see it when we present the budget this year, we spent a very long time last year really studying numbers like outplacements over time, looking over the last 10 and 15 years to see if we could actually project more efficiently and better than we have in the past. And this year, our projection is almost spot on, where the last several years it has been off wildly to start the school year. So we feel like we've got the good formula where we're able to project much more efficiently. That's really helping. We're also pushing on our contracts. We have some contractors, which, anytime you've worked with some services that provide all types of different services for special needs children, and generally they want to increase 2%, 3% per year just because our special education director is really saying to our contractors that we're wanting to hold some of those increases, and this year they worked with us much better as well, so that's helping. So when we have an additional service, it's not costing as much as what it would have in the past.
Other questions from board members on these topics? Mr. Brown?
Yes, if we can go back to your chart here on page 2, the first asterisk that says HR has been notified of 3 additional teacher retirements, but they are not reflected in this report. So how will that reflect in the report then?
Yeah, when they retire, so either second quarter, third quarter, you'll see, if we bring this back to you, you would be able to see that they have actually retired. Because until they retire, we don't want to calculate them in, because what if they're supposed to retire in January and they say, oh, I think I'm going to wait until March?
So that 850 may change.
Oh, it'll definitely change, yeah.
Okay.
We'll go to Mrs. Marmee, and then we'll go to Mr. Mottola.
So just clarify for us, because it was my understanding that when a teacher retires, they serve out the school year.
Oh.
And so can you just
Yeah.
edify, so I'm wrong?
Yeah, no, actually, teachers generally, if they can retire in June, that's when they prefer to retire, because they know that educationally, it's better for them, it's better for children. But teachers actually retire all throughout the year. And generally, it has to do when somebody started, 25 or 30 years ago, if they started mid-career, they started their career in the middle of the year, they're probably going to end in the middle of the year, or they have to work past when they were eligible to retire.
So just,
or age, yeah.
so you originally budgeted or a thought that you might have approximately 19 retirements, is that
Right.
correct?
That's correct.
So you may be on track, it's just that we don't know because the rest of the teachers may retire later in the year.
They do
you
notify
think.
us because there's a lot of paperwork. So right now, we feel like the 13 that retired basically on time, and then the 3 that are coming in will be what we will see for this current school year. But again, without a crystal ball, that can always change, but that's what we would count on.
Okay, thank you.
So right now, you have a volume issue as well as a timing issue in terms of the budget, because the budget assumed 19 and it assumed it all at the beginning of the year. This reflects that you're probably going to get closer to 14 or 15, hence the volume issue of 4 to 5 less than you thought. And 3 of those are coming during the year as opposed to at the beginning of the year. That's great.
And we're not
Right.
seeing- yeah.
Is this a follow-up
Phil
on
to
that?
chime in if you-
Ms.
No,
Esmond?
so-
Oh, we'll go to Mr. Matola.
That was going to be my question almost.
Okay, sure.
I
Go
just
ahead,
want,
Ms.
I just want to add to that, there's also an issue with, we're not seeing per person, we're not seeing the savings. We budgeted 40,000, and I think the average is about 20,000, so that's another.
So you have a
issue.
rate issue as well.
I'm sorry?
You have a rate issue. You have rate, volume, and timing. The
Right.
trifecta. Got it.
I-
Ms. Esma? And then we'll come back to Ms. Martin.
I just wanted to clarify on the retention that you said was the best in a decade. That's not just people deferring retirement. Those are teachers you expect to migrate out of the district for various reasons. And what do you attribute that to?
Yeah, I think our teachers are happy. I think we're trying to take care of our teachers, and we're being, a district where they want to work. I also think that we managed the budget very well last year in a very challenging year. It seems like a long time ago. But if you look around us, Westport was talking about layoffs, Stratford was talking about layoffs openly with their staff. And when you do that, first of all, for a teacher to move to those districts, it's not very attractive to go get hired in a district where they were just talking about layoffs. And I think our teachers, we never talked about that. We managed the budget by really, reducing where we could all year long. And we kept a really positive environment for our teachers, and I think it made a difference.
Okay, we'll go to Mr. Matola. Did you have something?
good. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Mr. DeWitt.
Thank you. Maintenance, so we're only a quarter into it, and I get it, but that first quarter, there's a lot going on, right? Summer work. So I'm kind of surprised that we don't see how much we're burning into our $3.9 million. I'm always concerned when we start talking this early in the year about have a deficit of 850,000, that's the first pile of money we go to. So is there anything more you can share on maintenance? Are we on a burn rate that's going to spend 3.9 million, or?
Well, when I look back at last year, all of the maintenance projects that we wanted to do, we did, with the exception of one that had to do with the bid process. So often when it's frozen because we have these other issues, our intention is to do them because we know if they're in the budget, we need to do them. Right now, Mr. Cullen is on track to be able to complete the maintenance projects that are planned in the budget.
Okay, thank you.
Well, on the topic of maintenance and projects and all that, give us a Reader's Digest version, if you could, on what's going on with the Ward football field and that whole, I don't know, fiasco, debacle, delay, whatever we want to call it. Where does that stand? Because I hear a lot of questions about that.
Yeah, I mean, they've been playing on the field. They have a beautiful new
Yeah.
scoreboard. Other than that, it's, the field is in play.
So the field is complete.
Yes, except for the track portion, which we know will come later. They can't pour the track right now with this temperature.
Will that be done before the track season?
Probably not because of the temperature,
Really?
right?
We're talking
So,
winter track.
and that was due to be done before the track season? It was due to be done
We
this
were
fall?
hoping to have that done in the fall, yes, but everything is the sequence and timing, and so you can't pour the track before you do the
Right.
field, and it got too cold before they couldn't pour it.
So what is...
They won't guarantee it. They could do it, but they won't guarantee it, which,
Yeah, what's the postmortem on this? And what are next steps with the contract? I'm not trying to look for fault, blame, anything like that. I just don't understand really what happened, other than deadlines were missed.
and honestly, their deadlines were not missed. And I know that that's what's out in the public, and we've addressed that. The first summer, it had more to do with the bid process. We couldn't get, they would not do the field by the time we were able to actually select the vendor. The second summer, we had to make a choice, and I say we, this is with the athletic director, the high school headmaster. We're not pleased with the scoreboard that was going to go in, especially on the main football field. But in order to change that board, they were going to have to wait to reorder, and that did push it back. And their date was the end of August, and they had us on the field when they said that they would. Doesn't mean that people were happy about that, and we knew that going in, but we also knew this is a multi-decade project that we wanted to put in what was right.
How does it become multi-decade when we
Well,
just
because
did this field?
if you looked at the scoreboard that got pulled out of there,
Okay, so the scoreboard is
Yes.
multi-decade, not the field.
not the field. Now, parts of the field are, I mean, you don't replace the whole entire field every time you replace the field, but, so it was on time, and I know that that was frustrating to people, but they met the deadline of what they had contracted to do. Now, I'm not going to say they were highly efficient. Our staff were having to check on them every single day. And we had some contractors that, came in and helped because the way that the project was put together was not, I would say, in the best way we would want to do a field in the future. And that really was the turf company was the contractor, having to hire subcontractors. This turf company has done many fields in Fairfield, done a terrific job for us, but they have done the turf. They were not experts at ordering steel and concrete, and they didn't, I don't think that they had, and I can't speak for them, I don't think they had the subcontractors, and actually realized in the contractor, but that's how it was bid, for them to be the contractor. That was part of their challenge.
So that, from the perspective, what's out there is that they were delayed, they missed deadlines and all that. What you're saying is, hey,
No.
there were decisions made, deadlines were not missed.
Right.
The deadlines were pushed back. Maybe there wasn't sufficient notification to the public that those deadlines were pushed back, but that was a known decision this summer when it was decided to replace the scoreboard with a scoreboard people would be more happy with.
Right, and to get 4 boards. There's actually 4, and originally there were, I can't remember how many there were, but it was the whole package was upgraded. But, I feel like from the school district perspective, from the headmaster, from the AD, messaged as soon as the school district knew what was happening with the project, because you also don't want to put out misinformation. And so as soon as the district really knew what was happening, then messages went out.
And I'll just add quickly from the board perspective that her communication to us through the summer was, we were kept up to speed with the project. Obviously, we weren't on site, we weren't having meetings, but she was in contact with us. And
Yeah, I'm not casting aspersions
No,
or
no.
anything. I want to know what's going on, but thank you for that. Go ahead, Mrs. Marmy.
So you mentioned the track couldn't be poured. So are you talking about the track won't be ready for winter track, or are we talking about spring track, outdoor track?
They can run on it, but it's not going to be repaired for the spring.
So,
I don't believe so. It's weather, it is driven by the weather, and I'm really not the best person, quite frankly, to sit here to talk about that. I know about this much because I've been involved with, construction before, but you would probably want to talk to somebody that actually can tell you. I can't even remember, I think the temperature's around 50. And it has more to do with night temperature than day.
so the track team will not necessarily be able to have practice in the spring?
No, they'll be
or
able
have
to
meets?
practice on, they'll be able to practice on it.
And they can have meets, et
That I don't
cetera?
know. That I don't know.
Well, winter track has indoor meets,
Yeah.
right? So
Indoor track, yeah.
But that's what I'm saying, I'm wondering what, for spring track. what-
Right.
Because I know with
Yeah, I
football,
don't know
you
at
have
this
to
point.
practice at
They can,
Ludlow.
my understanding is that the track is functional for another season.
Right.
It's going to be replaced in the summertime, so that they
Right.
can use it still.
Okay, so
I
that-
think so.
Okay.
Any other questions related to the Board of Education financial position at the end of the first quarter? Mr. Brown?
Just on tuition, how are we doing compared to last year on out-of-district students and tuition costs?
As of right now, that's an area, again, where I feel like we really have, for the first time in a very, very long time, an actual handle on. Our projection is spot on this year, where the last couple of years, we've been off, as many as 15 students. And when it's $70,000 per student, that adds up very quickly. Right now, we're spot on. We also have a team who is working incredibly hard with some of the programs that we put in place last year. We talked about the Impact program. to be sure that we have services available in the district. Our elementary program is our CLCS program that is new this year. That's been very successful, doing a terrific job, so it's on track right now to be where we're projected to be, which is uncharacteristic.
Mrs. Esmond?
Thank you. In the security expenses, in what areas or what items are causing it to be over budget? I know it will be offset by the parking, and I don't know how elastic that budget is
Security.
throughout the year.
What page are you looking at? I'm
Well,
sorry.
there's in the summary on page 3, I'm just looking at the commentary on it, but it's, the actual item is page 2 of the 2-page handout.
309.
Yes, since you
309,
you found it.
under support expenses, page 2.
Do you know what that is?
It's over budget by 20,
He's got-
$24,000.
he know- they know
24,000.
over budget.
I was just curious what the...
I'm not sure why, though.
Yeah, we can't answer that at this moment, I'm sorry.
Understood.
hey, can we get Mrs. Leclerc?
Could you give us a summary on what the actual enrollment in classroom configuration was compared to what was budgeted?
Classrooms were, I think we ended up adding one section. Do you have that, Ms.
Two.
Munsell? Two sections. But we reduced all that were in the projection, and then we had to add 2 more back.
What grades? What level?
Sherman, 5th grade, and, do you remember the other one?
Were they
Jennings
both
third.
elementary?
Jennings, 3rd.
Got it. Anybody else? Go ahead, Ms. Leclerc.
Was enrollment then about where you had projected it to be?
Do you remember how much we were off? I think elementary is slightly a little bit less. I'm positive. Elementary is a little bit less. High school was up. The one thing, the trend we saw this year in high school that was new for us is our attrition from 9 to 10. Generally, we will lose more of our 9th graders that go to private school. We did not see that happen this year, and we saw a little bit of it the year before. When Malone and McBroom ran our projections this year, they also talked about the in-migration being higher from 9th to 10th. So Ludlow and Ward both had between 50 and 70 more students than anticipated at each school.
Can you just forward to us, we don't need it by school at this point unless somebody wants it, can we just see by grade what our enrollment ended up being versus what the projection was for for the current fiscal year? Current school year, I'll call it. Right. Yes, and include and exclude open choice in that too, please. Thank you so much. What else?
What did you say was grade 5? I just know it's happening. I think you said 10 days.
Anybody else? Anything for
Because we moved teachers.
the Education Administration, Board of Ed on the first quarter? Seeing none, thank you for being here. Appreciate it. All right, now I'm going to go back to the order of the original agenda, and I'm going to take item number 3. We've already had our tour, but to hear an update on the clubhouse project, I'm going to ask Mr. Curley, Mr. Schwartz, and anybody they deem appropriate to come join them up at the table. And thank you for hosting us this evening, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us. So I'm going to ask Chuck Warrington from Colliers, who's the owner's rep, to join us, as well as Dean Petroselli from Silver Petroselli, who's the architect on this project as well.
Hal is being very generous here, thinking I'm going to be able to pass these out in any way, shape, or form.
They're collated into sets, so they should be, and it's 4 slides that are in the presentation, but those are the 4. So it's 6 pieces of paper, all set in sets, so just give 6 pieces each crisscross.
They're sets, so just hand
Just
out
pull the
one.
crisscrosses and hand it out.
They weren't sets. Yeah. I already screwed it up. Here. I do math, I don't do design.
So
No, just
in the information that Hal's passing out,
Just grab these and hand them
everything
out
that
like
he's
that.
passing out, you already have in your packet, with the exception of one
I don't know how
sheet.
you
It
got
just
that.
gives you a little bit more detail.
No, just hand a full section down. Sorry, Craig.
No worries.
And it's
Exactly what I was doing.
Thank you.
Here's another one.
No, that's it, we're okay on this
Yeah.
one. I don't know why.
Are you guys got everything?
Yeah.
The board does this.
Yeah, need that copy.
And for Bob.
Jerry, can you hear me without the microphone?
What do you need?
I need a whole set.
Oh, you need a set. Bob, we need a set.
You don't want to.
Because I'm going to project for the public anyway, so,
Yeah, I can hear you.
okay, great.
Thank you.
I told you. Hal, you're just trying to make me look bad. Good job.
Just getting
Go ahead.
So, thank you for having us. As we mentioned the last time we met, I believe it was May 10th, our intention was to come back to this board periodically. We were on your agenda for September, and that didn't work out for different reasons. October, same thing. November, earlier, that got pushed to here. So I apologize that we have not been able to get in front of you earlier. We have provided progress reports and updates to the Board of Selectmen and the RTM. So we're going to play a little bit of catch-up tonight. Tonight's presentation will contain a little more information than what we gave to the Board of Selectmen and the RTM in September. But really, I think it's important that you get a fulsome update of the progress that we've made, have a discussion and a dialogue about some of the decisions that we've come to and recommendations that we're making. This is not the meeting that we plan to discuss the funding request, but we are on your agenda for next week. And we are at a position where we are moving forward with a request for funding. The number is $7.6 million for the project. We'll get into that level of detail a little bit tonight, but primarily next week.
Next week?
And
December 4th, 2 weeks.
No, next week.
that's next week.
That's next week, yeah.
Yeah.
December 4th.
And next, at your next meeting, we will have these two gentlemen provide a pretty detailed look at what the project will entail, and we'll have that fulsome presentation. Really, the intention of this presentation, as I mentioned, is to give you a progress update, help you understand where we were, where we are now, how we got there, what decisions we decided to pursue or not pursue. But please do stop me and ask questions as we go. I'd like this to be as interactive as possible. And this is materials that you all have for the public's benefit. There's a reiteration of the committee's charge. We'll get into a brief explanation as to the reasons to support the recommendation of the building committee. We're going to get into where we were. We're going to get into where we are. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the revenue and expense side of the equation, because I know that's important to the Board of Finance. And then we'll go into a little bit of questions asked and answered, along with next steps. And then ultimately, I want to wrap up with what's relevant today, and that is this building committee was formed and funded with $250,000 to get to the end of the schematic design. So I want to give you an update on that budget as well. We don't need to get into the detail on the committee charge, but if there's any questions that come up, we can certainly go back and refer to it. The reasons to support the recommendation, and we'll get into what that is in a little bit, but ultimately, Smith Richardson is a major asset for the town of Fairfield. This golf course helps support the residential values, the home property values for the town of Fairfield. Smith Richardson and the Fairfield golf operations opened in 1972, and it's provided a surplus back to the town every year since it's been open. So this is an asset that works. The building is in disrepair, which we'll get into, which you saw a little bit on the tour. Ultimately, we need to put new tires on a car, we need to put a new roof on a home, new paint, whatever. We passed that point with this building, but ultimately, we'll get into the reasons why this project makes sense. Smith Richardson as a golf course is one of the best municipal golf courses in the state. Consistently top 5 in the state. A few years back, we were ranked #1 and received an award for that. People come from all over the state and New York to play this course. The course itself has great bones. the town made a commitment to rejuvenate the golf course about 9 years ago, when the golf course itself fell into some disrepair, had drainage issues, bunker issues, tee box issues. They bought into a 10-year improvement plan. We're in year 9 of that plan, and we as a town have reaped the rewards of that plan. The ideal number of rounds for this golf course is 40 to 45,000 rounds. We were teetering on going below 40 10 years ago, and we were losing the wrong rounds, the wrong type of rounds. Specifically, non-resident rounds help subsidize the rates for residents, and non-residents can vote with their feet by just not coming. The golf course was in disrepair. The town committed to reinvesting in this, and through the financial crisis and beyond the last 9 years, we've seen a steady rise in rounds, to the point where we've got the golf operations has had record surpluses the last 3 and 4 years. So that really is a testament to the commitment that the town has made to reinvest in the asset, and I think the clubhouse is just the next step to that process. As I mentioned, and as we've seen, the clubhouse and carport are beyond their useful lives, and the parking lot, if you pulled in, and as you pull out, you'll see still, the parking lot is in disrepair. Intentionally so, the town has made a decision not to spend money on that parking lot. It should have been redone 8 or 9 years ago, but if there's going to be construction equipment for whatever the project entails, it doesn't make sense to do that. But that is really at a point where it's a real mess. So this is an excerpt from the Town Facilities Commission conclusion from 2014. The clubhouse and grounds are in desperate need of major repair and replacement. The mechanical, electrical, and plumbing infrastructure has reached the end of its useful life. This is 2014. The interior of the building is degraded and the site is in need of major improvements. The existing configuration of the clubhouse facility and the dining area creates an inefficient use of space. Additionally, the energy efficiency of the existing building envelope is very low and in need of an upgrade. As Dean pointed out as we were coming in from our tour, the outer shell of this building is cinder block with 4-inch stone veneer. There's no insulation. We've got single pane glass here as well. We burned through, Ryan Scully from the Golf Commission is here as well as Anthony. Was it 9,000 gallons of oil last winter? It's
Per year.
yeah, for the year. Obviously, most of that's going to burn in the winter, but okay. So what I want to do is give you an update, kind of going back a little bit to where we were in May. The building committee was obviously formed. We've got 11 members, most of which are here tonight. Thank you for coming. And the Board of Finance and the other town bodies gave us $250,000 to work with to come up with a plan. We've engaged Colliers International as our owner's rep. They've been fantastic through the whole process. We went out and also, well, as a next step to that, we actually came up with 3 conceptual designs that we wanted to pursue and consider as potential options. One was a renovation. One was to rebuild on or near the existing footprint. And the third was to consider moving the clubhouse to the other side of the property. Since that, at that time, when we were in front of this body, you had asked us to justify the $250,000 budget, and would that be enough? You didn't want us coming back to say we ran out of money. So we've worked really hard to make sure we stayed under that $250,000, and we'll get to that conclusion at the end. I think you'll like it. But this is a slide that we showed back in, I think it was January timeframe, January, February, when we were at that initial stage. And if you can see, I don't know if this will work, there were 3 options that we put forth at the time. One was to take the 2008 feasibility study that the town went through at the time. The 2008 cost estimate for a renovation was $3.2 million. Escalating up to 2018 dollars, that's roughly a $4 million renovation. In addition to that, another possible consideration was a new construction alternative, which at the beginning of January we were thinking that's probably about a $4.8 million number. And then if we were to consider and look to move the cart barn and then the cart storage underneath the building, we knew there were going to be excavation costs to that. that was probably going to be closer to $5.8 million. So I don't want to hide the fact that our request for $7.6 million is a lot more than these numbers. And I imagine that many of you were asking the question, how did we get there, right? Well, a couple of ways that I feel it's important to talk to. This next slide reiterates the same numbers that we just had. So that just looking at that middle category, the 4.7 million, that was just an escalation up to 2018 dollars. But what it didn't include were the soft costs and the other items, because we were really trying to justify the $250,000. Would that be enough to hire an architect and come up with a design? And as a rule of thumb, talking to several of the folks who are on the committee now, at the time, did the work, as a rule of thumb, 5% of your building costs are a good proxy for what you'll need to spend on an architect and professional services. So is the $250,000 going to be enough to get us through a $5 million construction cost? So that's why we felt comfortable that we could get there. But what it didn't include from a project cost perspective is there's almost $1 million of professional services and soft costs that were not part of that 4.7, escalated up to $2018 5.5, and then if you add to that the contingencies, which we feel at this stage it's important to have the appropriate level of contingencies. Again, we don't want to go over budget, so we have to have contingencies to plan for the unforeseen. We've got really the apples to apples comparison is a $7 million project. Yes.
So you're saying the original estimate that we've been talking about for the last X number of years in the waterfall and all, never included architects or professional fees or?
I can't speak to what specifically the...
Well, that 941, what's in that number?
The 941 would be, sorry, there are two columns here and then a difference between the two.
Yeah, I just want to know the professional services and soft costs. Say 941.
Right. That would be the cost for the proposal that we're putting forward that gets to the 7.6. But the apples to apples
spending?
comparison.
That's the architect and the owner's rep and all that?
Materials testing, printing, all the fees and expenses that we call soft costs outside of construction. So the original 3.2 it appears to be construction budget only, and then there's the soft, and that usually represents 60 to 70% of the total project cost.
And I only ask this for process because every time we have this discussion, I don't care what the project is, we always start at a number and then 2x later, we're all sitting there going, oh, why was it 2x? You're literally saying we never accounted for. It doesn't appear as if we've accounted for, if your escalations are correct and everything, for the soft, you two, and the other soft costs that are. Okay.
So
I just want to be clear that I understood
if
what
we
that
go
means.
back to the document from 2008, the $3.2 million is made up of renovation costs, exterior renovations, kitchen addition, new cart, barn, and site work. There's nothing in that number for professional services or other soft costs or contingencies. So the two things that we...
So Craig, I'm sorry to interrupt. So you're bridging between the $4,755,000, the new construction option 2, you're bridging to
Yeah, your copy may not be highlighted, but you can see the $4,755,000.
Yep.
That's the.
No, I got it. I'm
Yep.
exactly where you are.
Yep.
But
And
you're
then
bridging it to the...
I'm trying to bridge to the 7.6.
Right, so what you're saying is clubhouse, cart barn, site work, you were up, not you, I know the numbers weren't originally yours.
Yep.
We're 783 differential. And that is cost differential. Now, I think you attributed it earlier, and I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. Did you attribute that earlier to higher escalations than you thought?
No, I may have misspoke if I led you to that conclusion, but the 4,755 is based on a building of roughly 7,700 square feet.
I understand.
What we're putting forward, and we'll get to why, in a little bit, but we're putting forward a plan for a 9,500 square foot building.
Got it. So which I think we understand that, you pointed that out, it was pointed out on our tour,
Yep.
right? So you're saying, okay, difference one is we're building a bigger building,
Yep.
and that's costing us, rough numbers, $784,000.
Correct. That's attributable
Right.
to the size, apples to apples. Correct.
Difference two was, all the numbers that we looked in previously, we're missing $900,000, $940,000 of soft costs.
Correct. And we also, in our number, are including roughly, in today's dollars, 546,000 of contingencies. But again, there's another step that needs to be taken to bridge to the 7.6, because when we escalated to the 4,755, that's 2018 dollars. We have another full year and a half to get through before we're in 2020 dollars for this actual spend. So if you continue that escalation,
Well,
the
the one
same
thing-
math on the bottom half of that sheet gets you to the 7.6.
So the thing that I get, I understand the size differential, and we can talk about it.
Yep.
I understand the 2 more years out. I get it. I mean, it's simple math. And again, this isn't pointed at you, because I don't think you did the original estimates. But forgetting the soft cost and the contingency, for lack of a better way, are we really that dumb?
Well, again, I can't speak to what was done in 2008. Nobody on this committee was part of that process. What we did in January when we came to you, and it really was before the building committee was formed. So as a individual resident, I sat before you, and together with Don DiMartino, and who else did we have with us? Yeah, Hal. Okay, so the three of us came to you. We were on the list to be approved for the building committee. We did some legwork. We worked with Anthony Calabrese to try and help justify the $250,000 budget. And Don's got a tremendous amount of experience, personal experience in this industry, and basically tried to solve or answer the question whether the $250,000 would be enough to cover the building cost, and that's ultimately at 4,755.
So the first thing I want to do, and this is more towards Mr. Mayor, and it's kind of a bigger issue. Bob, every year we go through our capital planning summit, and we rely on information provided by the administration on estimates, construction estimates. Clearly, the information provided on this one was faulty for its exclusion of some key costs. Can we just make sure that the other estimates that we rely on for future projects is not equally faulty, please? Thank you on that. Does anybody else have a comment? Mr. Walsh, you see your hand up?
The 2008 cost estimates, where did they come from? Is there a sheet that was prepared for that? Back in the day, a 2008 contemporaneously prepared sheet. That was it.
I'm sorry, I missed the first half of that.
Was that did you prepare that, or was that contemporaneously prepared in 2008?
This spreadsheet was prepared in January based on the information from the 2008 report.
Okay, would you be able to supply our board the original 2008 document?
Yeah, it's on the town website. We've got a whole load report that's available. It's a big report, so we'll send you a link if you need it, but it's available.
And when you were before us you were before us on February 6th, why did anybody raise the fact that none of these soft costs were in?
Well, again, the building committee hadn't been formed yet, and we had not done any work, right? And so the question that we were trying to answer was whether $250,000 would be enough to pay for the architect for the building. And what the work that Don put together was to say, if the building were to cost this much, we will have enough in the 250 to pay for and get through the design. I agree with you that had we done more work at that stage and had the building committee come together and formed at that stage and then come to you with a request, we would have probably pointed out the fact that this is just for the construction cost. Honestly, at that point, we didn't know.
Because it's kind of sitting where I'm sitting and looking back at February of your numbers and hearing about these numbers and wondering how we could be 60% off on that number.
Yeah.
60%.
And
It's
that's,
not like 12.
Yep.
I mean, this is more than half.
which is exactly why I wanted to put this slide up in front of you tonight, because I know that it's a big leap to get from $4.8 million to $7.6 million. But there is a story to it, and it's not necessarily the greatest story, but the primary driver to the difference in what we're asking for versus where we thought we were is related to the 1,800 square feet that we're asking to expand the size of this building. That's the bottom line. That's what this is coming down to.
No, I mean, that's a factor, but it's an explainable factor, and you walk this around. I get that. But the reality is just the sheer numbers, that's only $784,000 out of the total differential, several million. And you add on the professional fees and the contingencies, and you're at 1.5 million more. So it's literally 2/3 of this differential was poor information or incomplete information at the beginning, and then the rest of it is your costs, or rather the cost of the additional square footage, and then you're absolutely right in aging it out 2 more years. I get it. So it's not the big driver, Craig.
Okay, maybe it's not the big driver, but it is, I guess, the only controllable cost that we have now
Yeah.
is the $850,000 on the bottom right
Right.
of this sheet. We could make the building smaller, but we can't avoid paying the architect or the other costs.
Right,
And we
exactly.
And we can't stop inflation,
No, I get it.
so.
It's absolutely true. I'm just, we're trying to explain and get over the sticker shock.
Yeah.
Well,
Is
it's
really
just-
what it
it's
is.
just- And if you guys will remember the process, the building committee was approved in October by the Board of Selectmen, and at that time, they also approved the $500,000,
250.
or the $250,000.
See, you're already overspending.
So what else is new? The RTM did not form the committee until the following January. So we actually came before you, before we actually met. So there was a miss, I don't know, there was some steps missing in the process, because normally a building committee is formed, and then we put together the process and we asked for the funds. We actually got the funds before we were actually a committee, and we were locked into the 250. Hindsight being 20/20, if we would have had more time to do that, but what came first, the chicken or the egg? So we were kind of, here's the 250, the Board of Selectmen gave us 250, then the RTM made us a committee at the end of January, and we had to come before you in February to get that approved, and then go before them. And they actually approved the committee and then approved the 250. So the whole logistical formation of the committee and the way everything was done, and again, because this is only the second project that the town has done besides a school, we're taking baby steps and we're crawling. I think this has been a huge learning curve for everybody, including us. Unfortunately, this is where we are. We can't justify the numbers, because if we could go back a year, hindsight's always 20/20, but we can't. So we did the best we can with what we have. And we're trying to, at least give you the history and let you understand where we are now and how we got here.
And I'm going to jump to the last slide to burn the last slide, but we are on or under budget on the 250. We have managed that number, and we've had our challenges to get there, and we've had some cooperation from both the architect and the owner's rep to stay under budget. So I want to thank both of those firms and the individuals here, but we recognize that part of it we had to really stick to.
Let me ask you a question on that. And A, thank you for doing that. B, is there work that you would have done if you had more than the 250, which could potentially save us overall on the project before we go to schematic design and move?
Yeah, I
forward?
think the short answer to that question is probably, possibly. We had enough money in the budget to effectively consider several conceptual designs with broad brush estimates tied to them, and ultimately spend money on one choice to run that through to schematic design and get detailed estimates.
Does it make sense to do more detailed estimates on any of the other designs? Does it have a better result? And could it have a more
Yeah.
economical result?
Well, here's the interesting thing. When we got from the conceptual design stage, and I will get to the slide in a minute, but we thought that the cost of the project that we were going to move forward with was going to be about 7.1. We got through the estimates portion, it took about a month. The estimates came back at $8.9 million. We went through a value engineering exercise to bring that all the way back to 7.6. We cut over $1.25 million out of the project. But we cut it as far as we felt we could without jeopardizing the quality of the building. And we'll explain how we got there. But ultimately, we still have to go out for bid. So we are at risk that the bids may come in and it may be something different than 7.6. Now, we have roughly $500,000 of contingency in this 7.6 number. We're at project cost about 7.1. And again, we'll get there. But I don't know if running two different designs through schematic design detail would have saved the town any money. It may have allowed us to make a more informed choice, but
Could we get a better choice for the same price point?
I don't think
I'm not
so,
sure.
no.
I don't think so.
I don't
mean,
think so.
I'm looking at the building
Okay.
committee, and it's a consensus.
The answer to both your questions is no. I think we built the program first, and then we built the building around the program. So we settled on what we wanted to.
What we felt we needed.
What we felt we needed, what was in the best interest of the golf course, and that's the program. And then we
Now,
built the
that was
building.
done in concert, I'm sorry to cut you off, Hal, I just want to make sure. We have a separate golf commission. That program was designed in concert with the golf commission,
That's correct,
correct?
as well as
Okay.
the pro,
pro,
and
yeah.
everybody was involved in that concept, and they all bought into this program, as well as the entire committee. So once we had the program in place, and we've been tweaking this 6 or 7 times since we came up with it, then we built the building around the program. This is what we settled on, and we said, all right, let's get the best building to do this. So whether we had 2 or 3 options and another $250,000 or $500,000, it may have given us something different, but I'll never tell you that it would have been anything better, because I think we gave you the best that we're going to get. And I still think that this is still going to be the best out of anything we would have come up with, unless we went up the hill, which we all wanted to do, but we all know why we can't do that.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I was just going to say,
Chuck, our owner's rep.
early on the process, what we do to test what the options in the conceptual designs, which are primarily square, these square, what you see here, they're basically square foot, we don't have a site design or anything, is we do what we call high-low probable, and it's a conservative budget, a high-end budget, and maybe somewhere in between. And we did it for multiple options, the renovation portion, the new portion, and the deltas were around 250 to 300,000 between all of them. And I think what it came down to is, if you can renovate an existing this building and then force that program, all these spaces into here versus building a new, ideally for that amount, I think the general consensus was, for that dollar value, what are we doing? You're almost talking pennies on a dollar to get a building, and I don't mean to put it
Okay,
that
so the
lightly.
way you just described that, I'm going to distill what I heard you say.
Sure.
We get a brand-new building for $250,000 more than it would have been to renovate this building.
Yeah,
Effective.
roughly in
And
that
still
order of
meet the
magnitude.
program needs of an
At the
extra
same
2,000
size,
square
which
feet.
means only using actually, we would have ended up with a bigger building.
Yeah, dude.
Because the way the building was set up, we would have been
Load-bearing walls, trying to-
a little over 10,000 square feet. So we would have had additional space that really wasn't useful because of the way the building's configured. So,
Yeah, rough 250 to 300, rough order of magnitude to go new, demolish, take this completely down, abate it, demolish it, and build a new one, because your efficiencies with a new building, there's the unforeseen conditions that we've seen in some of the school projects that we're involved with.
So we can blame you for those?
Sure. So, yeah, so that was kind of the rhyme and reason at a high level.
So I think everyone at least understands the story to get from 4.8 to 7.6.
Does anybody have any questions on this part of the presentation before we go on? I want to make sure, I'm going to go to Mr. Matola, and we'll go to Mr. Walsh.
And maybe you're jumping the gun a little bit, but since we're kind of on that topic, can you explain the cost increase because we're getting a bigger building? It's my understanding that that's because some of the functions like furnaces and things of that aren't part of this facility now,
Correct.
right?
Correct. So, and I'm going to get to that in 2 slides.
Oh, I didn't mean to
So,
jump. Go ahead. I'm
yeah,
sorry.
I'll get to that.
I thought we were
John,
talking about
promise.
that cost increase, and that was a good time to do it, but I can wait.
Mr. Walsh?
Can you give me a breakdown of what the contingencies are?
Yeah, Chuck probably has that at his fingertips.
Yeah, sure, within the proposed budget. So the delivery for this project, just to kind of clarify, we're recommending a general contractor versus a construction manager, which in most of the school projects, you've seen construction managers where they have a CM contingency per se. That one doesn't exist in this project where, because of the size, and it's relatively simple, we think we can go to the GC and save some money in markups for that. The owners, in the budget we're proposing, the total owner's contingency is about $591,000, roughly 10% of the estimated construction value escalated for that. Within the current schematic design estimate, we'll have what they call design contingency. However, that contingency, as we develop the plans through, it shrinks down and ultimately comes up into what they call the trade cost and the actual hard cost of the estimate. For that, we're carrying around, I think, around 7% design contingency at this point. But it's primarily just owner's contingency in the project at this point.
You said 591.
Yep.
When I look under contingencies, it's 546.
Down below.
546
Looking at the
in this year's
2020.
dollars.
It's escalated.
Because out to the 765.
So basically, you're saying it's just math,
It's math.
how you get to that number.
Correct.
That represents about 10% of construction.
And what type of contract do you presume to have with the general contractor? Is it be a fixed cost, no matter what happens?
Yeah, it'd be a lump sum bid.
We're not due a penny more than that. If it's more, it's on their tab.
No, that delivery is a construction manager at risk, where we would hire a professional construction manager. Again, that's what we do in the schools, where they put together the bid packages, they help us put it out to bid, and they'll provide a guaranteed maximum price. That's where CM contingency comes into play, because they are taking a certain amount of risk to guarantee that. In this project, we discussed it internally and between Silver, ourselves, and the committee and members on the committee. We feel that going with a general contractor on a lump sum bid is a more economical way to go. You're not paying for the professional services up front, because we're demolishing this building, we're building brand new. In the schools, and those are most of our projects, when you're dealing multi-phase, moving occupants and moving the children around, that expertise is well worthwhile to have them on board. We don't have that situation here. So we felt there would be an increase in cost by using a CM on this project.
So there's a potential to go above that cost?
Well, the total project cost is what we're estimating for it. And so within the design estimate, we do have contingencies within our schematic design, like roughly 7%. There's always a possibility it can go higher. It's based upon the information that with Silver Petroselli, they did their estimate. We also hired a second independent estimator, professional. What we do is we take those and we do those at 3 separate times. We estimate them, we reconcile them together in a meeting, we talk about the scope. First, are we talking about the same scope of work? If we're not talking about the same scope, then we're going to be way off. But we first check the scope, and then we start looking at unit prices, looking at finishes, and the assumptions by each of the estimators. And so that's what we did in the estimate reconciliation, where we initially came in at 8.9 million was the reconciled estimate, and then the VE cost. So we have 2 estimators looking at that, but it can certainly come in where our recommended our estimated construction budget is roughly $6 million, $5,991,000 escalated dollars. Could it come in higher? Absolutely. There's always a risk of that.
Okay, but if the bids come in and they're higher,
Yes.
you talked about, Craig, you talked about that, well, we have $591,000 worth of contingencies.
Yeah.
So you might accept a bid that's higher. Because you have your contingency, right?
Well, I mean, I think we're going to try and be as cost-effective as possible to make sure that
You don't know
these-
what the bids are going to come back.
We don't.
So
That
you
is-
might accept a bid that's higher than
Yeah,
that.
and we did talk about the possibility of going out to bid first and then coming for funding. But, Dean, chime in here if you have some thoughts. But when we talked to both the architect and the owner's rep, what was explained and considered by the committee is that we run the risk of not getting legitimate bids or credible bids, because without funding in place, we're not going to attract the type of contractors that we're going to want to do this job.
The first question they always ask is the project funded? So if the project's not funded, they know you're fishing for fees and costs, and therefore they don't put a lot of effort into the bidding process. I think it's also worth mentioning, though, that we plan to put on what are called deduct alternates into the bid process. And those are really safety valves to counter that potential bid that's slightly over our projection. And that would be potentially looking at alternative materials or alternative solutions to various components of the building. You know, a boiler A and boiler B, while boiler A may be slightly better, there's going to be a cost difference. So we build in those deduct alternates so that they are kind of safety valves that we can then execute once that contract is awarded with the low bidder, so that we can bring their bid down so that it aligns with our proposed budget. So there is a process where we can build in those safety valves as part of a GC lump sum base bid.
And how much do you build in for that? Like, what kind of safety numbers do you build into?
Well, we build in items that are easy for the contractor to estimate, but have high yield in terms of some dollar savings. There's always a compromise, because we may be, you know, substituting hardwood floor for an LVT, which is a synthetic floor. There could be a $20,000, $30,000 savings. Is there a compromise? Yes. Is it worth looking at as a committee and as an architect level? Yes. So we would then take those deduct alternates and analyze their value and how that aligns with our estimate, and then make the decision based on all those factors.
Yeah,
We give you a pile of money, we give you 7.6, and the bids come in and they're higher, but they're within your number.
We will probably value engineer again back down to get there, so we're comfortable that, basically we want the project to come in and not have to come back again. So if the number came in at, if you gave us $7.6 million and the number came in at $7.6 million for construction costs, I think we would have to look at the alternates, because now we have no contingency left. I think that as a committee, with the experience and the people and the work that we've done here, we understand that we need to be at a certain number, and, you know, we need to have something left over just in case. I can't see us, if we get a bid at that end number, I can't see the committee accepting that bid and just running with it. It's too big a risk.
The other point that I think is important, and again, Dean, chime in here, the level of detail that has gone into the designs that were used for the estimates is beyond the typical level of detail. Silver went further than they would normally go at this stage, because they understood the importance of trying to get as good a number as possible.
Can I?
Yeah, I mean, virtually,
Before you go there, because I've heard the name before. So what other buildings did you do in town for us?
well, we're currently working at Mill Hill,
Okay.
and we're currently working at Sherman Elementary School, so those are two contracts.
What
that
are the
we're-
prior ones you did?
We've done a lot of,
Stratfield, right?
we did Stratfield as our large project, but we've probably done about a dozen smaller projects from our electrical crew to our mechanical crew, but Stratfield was our larger school project that you would recognize our name.
Did you do Ludlow?
We did not.
You Fairfield Ludlow?
No, we did not.
Go ahead, Mr. Witt. Thank you.
To follow up, so I get the alternates, right? So, and I understand that. But on slide 15, there's a value engineering. You've mentioned that term a couple times, right?
Yes. That's how we got from
Being an
that.
engineer, I know what that means. So I just want to be clear. The real estimates you have
Yep.
are really 8.943. Is that correct?
No, because a lot of what was included in that level, at that stage, were granite curbs in front of the clubhouse.
Pavers.
Pavers around the property, and
Concrete in lieu of bituminous,
So
yeah.
who did the value engineering?
it was an exercise that was done jointly together. Silver and Colliers prepared the information, basically gave the building committee a line-by-line menu of cost per items, and then as a committee, we discussed, yes, we should make that move, no, we should not. An example,
But you didn't go back out for estimate.
Correct.
So the only
third party
number
estimate.
that you really have estimates on,
But the estimates,
8943.
but the estimates that added up to 8943
Yeah.
were itemized. So by itemizing that
We're chopping
estimate.
them down.
I get, I'm not going to change my mind.
Okay.
8943, the only thing you have estimates on. And then you, as a building committee, have taken that down with guidance, you know, and I'm not trying to minimize that, 1.3. So your 7.6, it is really kind of your opinion of the program.
I mean, I'll look to both these gentlemen and.
I personally did the initial estimate for Silver Petroselli.
Uh-huh.
I then did the value engineering re-estimate based on the items that were taken out of the project. So the number that we derived at were from the same author, myself. My initial numbers were high. We then value engineered those numbers, reduced scope out of the project, changed granite to concrete, changed pavers, changed concrete sidewalks to
Moved the cart
bituminous.
barn back.
We moved the cart barn, which was a big saving. That value engineering exercise then brought us back to the estimating process, and then that second number was a derivative of that process, that value engineering process.
That's not Silver's best and final, right?
Our best and final. At the
Based on what
point,
you have right
at the
now.
point where we are in the project, that's our opinion of the cost as a snapshot in time.
And those value engine, and part of that process is we're going through the estimating reconciliation process. We're coming up with these items as we go. And so the committee said, come up with a list. We put everything on the table, whether we knew they liked it or not, whether it was ideal or not. We put everything on the list, and this is just the first of 5 pages of items that we presented to them.
Yeah.
There's other ones that weren't chosen, that in the case of the bid, we could go to the list and go what was taken out. So the numbers are vetted by the estimators, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The one thing I want to say, I'm sorry.
Yeah, no
The one thing I
problem.
want to say in the positive is this, contingencies, I don't know who said them, I've been out. When we do schools, you got to move kids. We find a Wynwood PCB, oh, everything stops, kids move out, right? If you're just knocking this thing clean down, right?
Yeah.
You should have less need for contingency, right? The contingency that's built in here is really market fluctuation more than anything.
And some bids, and that's ideally, yes, you're right. And ideally, we've had the hazardous materials consultant take a look at the building. We haven't taken samples yet, just did a visual
But I
inspection.
mean, it's all going away, right? It's not like we have.
It's all going away.
It's still got to be disposed of.
Yes.
We
we
gotta
gotta-
dispose of it
right.
properly, but that's a
I
lot
get
less
it.
expensive than trying to.
But if you factor in an average cost of remediating the building from 1972.
Yep.
In your contingency, I feel pretty good about that. The problem with the schools are, again,
Right, exactly.
you find it in the gym, oh, guess what? This is going to be
Riverfield, yeah.
exponentially.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
that's
Which
right.
is also one of the reasons why we went with the new building as opposed to the renovation, because once you get inside,
And then there's
Which
field
was-
conditions too. We've taken Born's field conditions.
Yeah. Okay.
Go ahead, Ms.
So specifically environmental contingency, we talked outside about the oil tank.
Yeah.
Any clue from testing, if you can do that, whether you think there may be any environmental issues and what is a healthy
Yeah, no,
buffer for
the,
that?
we're looking at that, and we haven't taken any samples around because it's underground. It's a 1,000-gallon oil tank, so it's not, if we're talking 10,000, then I think there'd be a larger concern for that. But we haven't done any testing for the underground oil tank.
But we have had environmental inside the building doing a visual of the facility, to at least get a scope and a scale of what is involved with the demolition of this existing building.
So you're comfortable with?
At this point, we're comfortable with that
Is
number.
aggregate
Correct.
number?
Yes, within all the site, yeah.
I want to go back to Jim, I'm sorry, Ms. Esmer, you done?
I have a follow-up question on environmental, unless you.
You can follow up on the environmental, then I want to come back, because I have something. No, you can follow up.
How are you so confident without actually testing, you know, on the environment? How are you so confident on without doing any testing? By just someone walking in here and looking around?
Yep.
Do you feel so confident that we don't need a larger environmental?
Yeah.
I think you can see where some of these questions are going. I mean, if we
Yeah.
approve you a certain amount of money, there's no coming back.
I
There
think the
there really
committee
isn't.
understands that.
Okay,
I-
so
yeah.
I don't understand, we've had other issues in schools on environmental issues.
Right.
right.
And we've gotten hit with
But
lots
you
of
haven't,
extra
you
dollars
haven't
on
taken the building
environmental.
down, you haven't raised the building. you've had to deal with a building that was intact and occupied. But this building's just going to be knocked down, so it's really going to be, it's going to be dealing with the structure. So by knowing what you're dealing with, and we're not digging into the ground, once, we have a foundation here, so, we know what's underneath as well. So our biggest worry is what's out back.
But, and just to be clear, you talk about a confidence level. We understand that we don't have the high confidence level that you're mentioning. We understand the consequences of getting it wrong, which means we have to change something to stay under 7.6. But at the end of the day, what we did with the $250,000 budget was spend it on our owner's rep and our architect. We did hire the third party to estimate. We did hire experts to test the septic and to do the subterranean work, the geotechnical reports. Those were the things that we could afford to do within the 250. We are limited to a budget that allows for a visual inspection at this point, and we understand that there may be a risk associated with an oil tank in the ground. But if that adds cost, we're going to have to find it somewhere else.
Is that the worst case scenario, would be the oil tank in the ground? I mean, is there any possibility that there could be PCBs in this building? Any possibility?
It's really based upon the area of the building, yeah.
Yeah, PCBs and asbestos
Because
were
we
used
had a
all the way
problem
through the
with PCBs
19...
down at the dump, and it cost our town $800,000.
Yeah, they were used all the way through the 1980s, so it's a
Yeah.
possibility that they
It's
exist in
definitely
this
possible.
building, yes.
But isn't that just, let's assume it has something like, it's a disposable, the issue is disposing those types
Correct,
of materials.
correct. Most of your expenses in your schools comes through air monitoring and all the issues that are dealing with occupied
Displacement.
buildings.
Mitigation.
In this case, you're literally taking product and putting it in either dumpster A or dumpster B if it's hot or not. The costs are much lower than the challenges of an occupied building, a la your schools, yeah.
I think one of the things, I'm sorry, Jim, are you set with that answer for now? Or no?
Are you pursuing?
No, I was going to go somewhere.
No, I think we're a little bit sensitive to it, because we've, as a town, watched PCBs continually cause us issues. And your numbers seem to be based off some visual, and I don't know whether there's going to be PCBs and how we're going to, and I admit, they're not going to be in the air, we don't know all the problem that we have at schools with the windows and all that stuff. But I've seen it down at the dump
Yeah.
on a failed process.
I think...
And I've watched it cause a lot of $800,000 worth of cost.
I think the point that you're raising, Jim, is exactly the point that I am concerned about, and the entire committee discussed about why a complete tear down versus trying to renovate limits that risk. Because if we renovate and stay within $250,000 of the alternative starts from scratch, we run the risk of burning through that 250 savings and then going well beyond it. Because it is a different risk profile if you're trying to work with the existing building and salvage it. And I think the fact that what we're recommending is a tear down and start over, the risk is lower in that scenario.
Well, it's remediation costs
Exactly.
as
Yeah.
opposed to displacement costs.
Correct.
And the logistical nightmare.
Yeah. Yep.
I want to go in a little bit of a different direction.
Sure.
And I just raised this because I think it's good. First of all, thank you to the committee for being here, and thank you for your service to the town, because it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort and a lot of angst. And that doesn't go unappreciated by our board. You should also know that we have an enormous amount of respect for the building committees that come before us and work with us. And that free flow of information is something that is very necessary if you're going to be successful and we can support you should this project go forward. That being said, you have both the great blessing and the great curse of having a very experienced Board of Finance here that's done well over $250 million worth of building projects for this town, funded them anyway, over the last 15, 16 years, whatever the heck it is. And we've seen, as Mr. Walsh alluded to, building projects go awry from the standpoint of being underfunded and come back because of PCB issues. We've seen building projects go awry because of scope creep. We've seen building projects go awry where they let go of the architects and hired brand-new architects
and did not build what we funded, but built something totally different, which cost more than what we funded, and then they needed more money to actually do something that needed to be done,
Yeah.
which was replace a roof and windows. We've seen virtually everything. We built a building down at the beach to replace a 100-year-old building that lasted about 24 months. So there's not a whole heck of a lot that you can throw that we haven't seen. The thing that concerns me here that I just want to be very clear on, that I think we would be equally upset at, is there's a lot of numbers in here, rightfully so, contingency numbers, cost escalation numbers, okay, that come to this 7.6. And you value engineered a lot of stuff out.
Yep.
What I would hate to see equally, maybe not equally, but what I would hate to see is a number come in at 7.1, and all of a sudden the committee think, wow,
Let's
we
get
can
granted.
add
Yeah,
back those
$500,000.
things
Right.
that we took out.
Yeah.
Right? No, we're funding what you guys, should we fund it?
Sure.
What you're asking to build.
Yep.
We don't want hardwood floors and things like that. We want the building that you're asking to build.
Yep.
So I don't want this bid coming back at 7.1, we get whatever,
Right.
because this building isn't a school.
Right.
It's a recreational facility.
Yep.
As opposed to, and I hate to put it like this, but a required facility.
With
So,
an ed spec.
with what? With an ed spec.
Yeah, very
Right.
detailed ed spec.
That makes sense? 'Cause
It does.
that's equally
And-
concerned, it would put everybody in a very bad light
Right.
if that were to
Just
happen.
so you understand, and
Yeah.
excuse me, Craig, it's that this committee has had that conversation, and I'll be honest with you, that the people on this committee, and most of us have been around for a long time, our goal is to give you back money at the end of the project.
Right.
Okay, because that would make you guys the happiest people in the world. And that's what we're truly trying to do. We're trying to dot the i's and cross the t's to the best of our ability today.
Yeah, and by the way,
Can't tell you
Hal,
what's going to happen tomorrow.
mine wasn't an accusation
No, I
that anybody
understand
was
that.
going to do that. It
And-
was just,
And we're all,
Hey,
the
we gotta
whole
be
committee
cognizant
is
of
well
this.
aware of the history of what has gone on in the town and what has happened. And because we are the first real building committee to do something besides a school, and we know we are setting a precedent.
No, there's
moving forward.
Penfield.
Well, but Penfield really wasn't because because of what
why, are they
that was
teaching
done.
classes there?
Well, because I voted no. Penfield was, but Penfield was not, it wasn't this is really a different kind of project. Everybody wanted, the Penfield needed to be done, and everybody felt that this was the best way to do it. And then the town jumped in and helped a lot with that. Okay, so, Public Works worked with Penfield, and there was a lot of other stuff done with that building committee. This is we're doing this like we do a school, except we're doing recs. So, and we understand that, we don't want Pearl Elementary School, to use that example, and I know that's pretty much the example that everybody in the town looks at and says, why do we need what.
There's a few. I mean,
Yeah, but
there's
that's
really
just
a
the
few.
example, and we've had this conversation in the committee. And Craig has been around for a long time, I've been around for a long time, we're all very much aware of not at value engineering back in. We want a building that is in the scope of what is in the best interest of the golf. This is not a country club, this is a clubhouse for a town facility.
But Tom, I do want to touch on that point,
Yep.
though, because there are items on our list that we went through the value engineering exercise, the menu item that the architect and owner's rep created for us. We had to make some tough decisions to try and manage this cost down. There are some things that might make more financial sense for the town long-term for us to add back in if we can afford it and stay under 7.6.
Well-
And let me give you an example, and this is going to be a simple example, but, for example...
By the way, you don't need to give me an example now, Craig. That's not, if that comes to fruition,
Yeah,
before that decision is made, let's have a conversation about it.
Okay.
That's fair.
And come back.
That's fine.
Right? Because
That's what the law
everybody says that at every committee.
sure.
And we find out about it when we get the angry phone calls from people that are in that school and said, did you see, here's a big one. the ceiling in the conference room at Sherman School. Remember with the electric, hey, did it make sense? It might have made sense.
Right.
But we found out about it when we got called on the carpet
Yeah.
by taxpayers who said, why the hell do they have a recessed ceiling in a conference room in Sherman School
Right.
when we can't add square footage or whatever?
And that's a fair point, and we will happily come back to this committee or Board of
Right.
Selectmen or any of the town bodies to make sure that any additions are justified. But the example I did want to give, and it is one that we talked about as a committee, concrete curbs will last a heck of a lot longer than what's the word?
Bituminous.
Bituminous curbs.
hates
Especially
that
in a
word.
tight parking lot where the plows are going to make turns and pop curbs. If we
I
could-
get it. Yeah, no, I totally get it. I'm
So-
just, just don't surprise us with things like that.
Understood.
Yeah, go ahead, Mrs. Marmee. Sorry I went on so long.
I know we're going to get to revenue, right? We're going to
Yep.
look at what the new construction will get us in
Yep.
terms of increasing the square footage and
Yep.
what that might mean in terms of our programs and our
Yep.
revenues. You are going to address that.
Yeah.
Are you also going to address, do we have a menu here of the things that you might grow the revenue even further
Yep.
to get back to your earlier point about what you might add in? Because I think that would, you don't have to go into a huge amount of detail, but you're going to give us a snapshot of why we're doing this,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Beyond it
absolutely.
being outmoded
So-
and.
So we kind of digressed a lot on this one slide and went beyond it. So I think we'll probably be able to skip through a couple of slides. But just to get back to the script, after May 10th, we hired Silver Petroselli. We, as Hal mentioned, we assessed the existing program, what our square footage looks like, and what our requirements are. We defined them based on the needs that we understood, based on discussions with the Golf Commission, the Golf Pro, and the different clubs here. We did review and consider multiple conceptual designs. We did not, we looked at a renovation, but we did not pursue it. We looked at a move to the top of the hill. If we can get into the rationale behind that, but I don't know if, this presentation's gone long already, but I do want to make sure that.
Actually, I want to hear it, because
Okay.
I'd like to know why.
Okay, so I think.
How made it seem like it's obvious?
No.
It's not so obvious.
Yeah, that's fine. And so let's touch on that for a moment. So the renovation, we already touched on a little bit, and that is, we're at roughly 7,500 square feet all in here. We're going to 95, adding about 2,000. There are reasons for that, but, and as Hal mentioned, we determined the square footage need and then built the building around it. In order to renovate and meet that need, we have to add an addition of roughly 2,000 square feet. After you do all that with the other work, we thought, or the estimates were roughly $250,000 to $300,000 apart from each other. And we didn't feel that the risk associated with the renovation and the unforeseen cost, together with a floor plan that just was fitting a square peg in the round hole, it was worth trying to save $250,000. So that was dismissed. We did run that to ground, in a fair amount of detail, but that was ultimately dismissed. The other big consideration that we looked at was to go to the top of the hill, where the existing maintenance barn it sits now. We talked about one of the benefits of going to the top of the hill is that it would place the clubhouse closer to the driving range. It could share a parking lot, and hopefully generate additional revenue from the driving range. Just because when people park here, they don't go there. You have to get in your car to go to the driving range. So we really thought that we could increase revenues quite a bit, which would help cover the debt service for any bonding. But when we looked at it closer, ultimately it looked like it's about a $2.5 to $3 million bigger ticket to go to the top of the hill. There's no infrastructure up there. We'd have to build a septic as well as bring in the electrical. There's obviously electrical service, but not the right size. The layout itself was tough because there's not enough space for much more than the building itself on this side of Hoyden's Lane. So the parking lot would have to be across the street about 500 feet away. So it was less than ideal. We had conversations with some of the other town officials to understand what our limitations would be, whether it be from zoning, making sure you stay far enough away from the street, or just from an emergency services need. It's very likely that the road would have to be expanded, and sidewalks would have to be installed. And ultimately, through construction, with all the construction traffic, if we happen to knock over the corner of a stone wall all along Horton's Lane, the town would be responsible for repairing that.
We may also have to rebuild stone walls, because if the road needs
Just
to
to
be
widen the
widened,
road.
we would have
would
to
have
take down
to.
the property owner's stone wall and then put it back up. So when I talk to emergency services, they're okay with Horton's Lane the way it is now as a residential property. But if we put a public facility up there, they have great concerns about emergency vehicle access, basically a fire truck. Getting up there in an emergency with, and when you go from houses to a facility this size, they would want the road. There was a much needed renovations to the roads to both Morehouse Highway and Hoytons Lane that they would want, they would prefer that we would do. Also access from the parking lot back into pedestrian traffic as well as golf cart traffic and all of that. So there was a whole bunch of things we have to build in just to make it feasibly work. And that's where the number comes out to be almost $3 million more. So we just, yes, we could have come to you and said we'd like to go up the hill, but then we have the, as we all well know, the neighborhood. And who knows how long that could be tied up.
Whether it was legal expense or just delays.
Right, the field was a year and a half in the process, and we didn't, we figured it just, I'm not sure it was really worth the fight. It would have been a beautiful place to put it up there, but I'm not sure it's worth $3 million and the fight with the neighborhood to do it. And we as a committee decided that that was probably, it was in the best interest to keep it down here.
If the revenue side of the equation were larger, like if we were really, if the revenue from the range would cover that incremental cost, we would have had a discussion about it with this board. But ultimately, there was no projection for revenues that was going to cover the additional $3 million. And I do remember what you said, Mr. Brown, is that that's a possibility, but it's not an absolute. And that actually stuck with us. We talked about that in the committee.
What are the revenue projections if you had a contingent, a driving range that was within range of the clubhouse?
Yeah, I think we
From what
probably
it is to
well,
what it will be.
yeah. And is Anthony still here? You're here. Do you know what the range revenue was per year right now? Is it roughly
About 150, I believe.
$150,000? So maybe that goes to 450.
Yeah.
Maybe 300,000. That would be, ambitious. I think we'd probably have to make, not part of this project, but the town would likely want to make some type of investment into that side of the street. The Sterling Farms Golf Course, municipal golf course in Stamford, has a driving range that shares the parking lot. That, to me, is the model of what we might have been. They have a double-decker driving range, they've got heated bays, they do $1 million a year in range revenue. So it's possible.
When we were here in February, I had asked a question about whether you talked to the town about maybe swapping properties. So
Yep.
some of the trust property that's next door, that's contingent to your
Yeah,
property
yeah.
here.
We had that
switching
conversation.
it
He wasn't here.
with,
Yeah, we
Yeah, we had that conversation.
We spoke to
We-
wetlands and engineering, and just because of the drop-off and all the wetlands that are in that area, obviously right behind the cart barn would be the best place for it. The wetland, conservation wasn't, they wouldn't be real happy with it. Engineering wasn't, just to re-engineer it, to make it work for a driving range, would be very cost prohibitive because of the way the landscape is and stuff. And so, they advised us not to. Heavily, conservation said, we really prefer you didn't do that. So, because of the
And-
wetlands and all the stuff that's in there now.
Even if there were conservation issues, the change in terrain in that location, you've got a pretty steep ravine. It drops down, there's a creek that runs through, and it's a lot of the drainage that runs through Grace Richardson, and then it goes back up a pretty steep hill as well. So practically speaking, even if it wasn't a wetlands issue, we'd have to clear all the trees and somehow pipe that water course and try and level that space. it wouldn't be practical. Something that the Golf Commission might want to consider in more detail, but cursory review and the discussions that we had with the town bodies, it
Yeah,
just
and
wasn't
we had those
practical.
discussions at the very beginning, because we, as a committee, we really wanted to move it. You know, it would have been the time to do it, but, you know, the
Yeah,
recommendation was
and they
just-
worked with us. We've had maps pulled and the topography reviewed, tried to see what would fit and and it just didn't fit.
Is there any extra property where the course design can be changed that would allow you to have a driving range
I
contiguous
believe,
to our
yeah,
parking area and range?
yeah, I believe, this predates my involvement, but probably about 15 to 20 years ago, when they were looking at the 9-hole expansion.
Yep.
There was talk of moving the driving range and taking the space where the fourth and fifth hole sits now, which is right over here along the road, making that the driving range, and then taking space across the road. We have space across the road. The town owns 13 acres of property there. If the town really wanted to investigate moving the driving range to a spot that would provide additional revenue in close proximity to the clubhouse, that's probably the best way to do it. Move 2 holes to the other side of the street, and then take over these 2 holes and make that the driving range.
Sounds like an idea.
One that this committee, it goes beyond our scope, but certainly one that the Golf Commission, I would suggest, should investigate. Okay, so does that address your questions about the 2 options that we did not consider in the whys? Okay. So let's talk a little bit about what we did select. Again, this is getting back to your question about the additional space. If we compare our existing square footage to where we are looking to move, we've got it broken down into a few different categories. The golf operations and the pro shop is going to stay virtually the same size. The pro shop is adequately sized. The pro isn't looking for additional space, and there's no reason to expand that space. If you turn to Hal provided a more detailed list. It reconciles to this summary sheet, but it does give you the line item detail if you're so interested. The biggest area where we actually reduced square footage is in the utilities area, which is basically the locker rooms, the bathrooms, the mechanicals. You can see there we actually went down from 2,300 square feet to roughly 1,800 square feet, down about 500 square feet. We're taking the bag storage out of the locker rooms. We have a problem now by having it gender specific. We can move bag storage out into a less expensive space if we're able to reconfigure the cart barn in a way that has a storage room and bags can be stored there. That's the plan. Our original plan before we value engineered the cart barn back into that corner was to have a standalone cart barn over here with a room dedicated to bag storage. So that's part of the work that Dean's going through now to make sure that we can still fit that. But there's no reason to spend money to store bags underneath the roof of the clubhouse. It's just too expensive per square foot. So we've reduced the size of the locker rooms, but we've been smarter about it. So we are giving the ladies 4 bathrooms instead of 2. And we're not, and we're using the space more wisely. The other thing that we're doing is, despite the fact that we're shrinking, we're actually, we have the bathrooms available in the locker room, but we also, in the new floor plan, and we'll get there in a second, we have 2 unisex bathrooms closer to the restaurant. That was one of the complaints that we had is, if someone's sitting at the bar today and they need to go to the bathroom, they have to walk from the bar through the restaurant. If there's an event, they're interrupting an event, and they're going into the locker rooms. There's no reason for anyone to go into the locker rooms unless you're using the locker room, right? But we were able to, despite adding more, we were able to use that more wisely and shrink it. Where we have increased materially are the next 2 categories, food service operations. We've gone up almost 2,000 square feet, about 1,800 square feet. That's because this space right here, as you see it, seats about 75 to 80 people in the dining room if we're tight. We have about another 20 in the bar area. That's 100 to 105 heads. In order to have a revenue opportunity of attracting golf outings, charity events, fundraisers, we have to have room for about 120 to 150 golfers. Our design will accommodate that. So that's primarily that together with the kitchen, which we all saw is way undersized for this facility, let alone something that will actually be able to handle events. We've properly sized that. Silver Petroselli has a restaurant consultant available and provided extremely detailed estimates on exactly what will go where. So that work's already been done and included in our estimate.
Craig?
Yes.
Excuse me. So revenue if if there's a golfing outing or
Yep.
whatever happens, that revenue goes to the town or to the concessionaire?
A little bit of both, because the revenue stream that the town gets from the golf operations is the rent from the concessionaire and the traffic from the golf play. So if we have a golf event and there's golfing, we're getting, is it $85 a head or $80 a head?
It's about $80.
And the restaurant, they're using this, so the restaurant is interested in having events as well because it means increased revenue for them. If there's a birthday party or an anniversary party or a funeral or some other function, a high school reunion, that's not revenue that the town's going to collect. That's going to be revenue that the concessionaire is going to collect based on their contract.
What about a rental fee for the room?
Again, based on the way that the contract is written with the concessionaire, the intention is that restaurant business is for them. The town is not in the restaurant business. We are in the golf business, but we're not in the restaurant business. So we don't have a fee that's going to the town to use the room. However, one thing to keep in mind is that to the extent that this room is available for the concessionaire to rent out for a birthday party or an anniversary party, it's a more attractive place and therefore in the bid process, they may pay more in rent.
Somebody else had their hand up over there, and then, now I'll go to Mr. Walsh.
And where do we stand, Anthony, you need to come up here and let me know, but where do we stand with that contract? So will we have a new contract once this building is built, where we can put this new facility out for bid?
Yes. Short
Correct.
answer is yes.
Okay.
We currently have a contract for 2019, which is this upcoming season with the current concessionaire for 1 year. From there, we'll figure out what we're going to do with 2020, and then I would assume sometime in the summer of 2020, we'll most likely put that out to bid once we know what this building will consist of for a restaurant concessionaire.
And historically, this facility has had a 5-year contract with annual renewals. Whether the town wants to continue that formula or change that, that's something that they can consider down the road.
So explain to me why there's no room rental fee. Why does the wedding or a birthday party or whatever it is come in here and we make $0?
Can't explain why it's currently written that way, but that's the current contract. Current contract is concessionaire pays for this space in here. They can rent it out, they get all the parties, all of that. But we just get the base rental fee for the annual amount.
I presume based on what's going to be happening and the size and the modernness of everything, that you'd want to change that business plan.
Correct, and I do believe in the new floor plan that there is a meeting room, which with the town, which is separate from the restaurant and the parties, that would be able to be rented out. But as far as the restaurant goes, and doing whether it's a birthday party or a bar mitzvah up here, I still believe that would generate revenue for the concessionaire, which in turn would have them bid higher if this room is larger.
The other thing is you don't want to have a golf tournament come in here and say, we want to do this, and have your concessionaire say, no thanks, I'm not making enough money on it.
Yeah.
And then you miss out on the golf tournament. So all this is negotiated through your rental agreement and what have you. And it's not an issue right now because the place isn't big enough. So.
Right. And one of the things that I think we heard loud and clear from for the last several years is we didn't necessarily want to create a facility that's going to compete with Penfield or attract weddings and other non-golf events. What the committee tried to do is right-size the facility for golf events as the revenue opportunity. And if the concessionaire happens to be able to rent or book an event that's not golf-related, but is in the evenings or in the winter or whatever, that hopefully translates into more rent that we collect, but it's all based on their best guess or calculation or what their bid's going to be on the rent stage.
Right.
Well, how did you figure out, I mean, we'll get to it in a little while,
Yeah.
I guess, the revenue opportunities and
Yeah.
the revenue projections.
Yeah.
How do you figure all that out if we're going to figure it all out later?
Well, and we'll get there. I promise you that
okay,
we'll get there.
that's fine.
So,
Continue.
but I wanted to make sure everyone was clear that we kept the pro shops the same size or slightly smaller. We reduced the locker rooms and the other space, although made the bathrooms more quantity-wise. We increased the food service kitchen and restaurant and bar. Another big number that's on here, and I want to make sure we spend a little bit of time on it, is circulation. We're going up from roughly 850 square feet to almost 2,500 square feet for circulation. Circulation is the flow between space. So it's your entryway, it's your hallways, it's literally the thickness of the walls as you build a structure. When you come into this building, it is dysfunctional. You walk into a cinder block box. You have to walk through into the restaurant to get to the pro shop. The only hallway that we have to speak of is right here that runs from this door down to the pro shop. But if you were in the bar, as I mentioned before, if you are going to the bathroom, you have to walk through an event or through dinner and to get there. So one of the things that as an industry norm, rule of thumb, is roughly 30% of your space will go to circulation. Our design is a little bit more than that, not intentionally, but just based on the way that we've tried to segregate out and put the locker rooms, the pro shop, the kitchen, and the way, and create the space, which you'll see on the floor plan momentarily. The number came out at roughly 35%. And in the end, the other component is, while the existing square footage is 6,700, what we all saw was the boiler room, the storage behind the cart barn, and the refrigeration over in this corner are not part of the 6,700. So really, to make this apples to apples, you really have to add another 850 square feet to really make it an apples to apples comparison, because I don't think anybody wants us to put our mechanicals room or table storage or refrigeration outside the envelope of the building. It just doesn't make sense.
Can I ask a question in regards to this
Yeah.
document right before we move
Yeah.
on?
Yep.
In dining room, you have that we currently have existing 1,800 square feet.
Yeah.
And that the proposed is 1,841.
Right. It's a little bit of,
In
yeah.
the bar area, you basically say zero, and I see a
Right.
bar area.
Yeah, because the bar, the 1,800 is this rectangle.
This-
The bar is within this rectangle, but we calculated the dining room at 1,800. In theory, you can knock out probably 500 square feet for the bar and take the 1,800 down to 1,300, if you want to look at it that way. But just the way we calculated this, and originally this was really designed as one large space, we just calculated that rectangle as that 1,800 square feet. You dice it and slice it either way, the numbers are the same. It's either 1,300 and 500 or 1,800 for the dining room. In any event, we want a dining room that's the equivalent of this space, and then we want a bar space that's another 950.
And just like down below where you have kitchen, refrigeration, restaurant storage, you have zero in the new building. Is that because it's built into space up in the food service operations?
Which line item?
He's comparing.
If you go to the very
850
bottom,
to
ancillary
4,500.
space, you have food, kitchen, refrigeration, restaurant storage, boiler room.
Yes, it's all built in.
Correct. That's all within the
Within
new
the other
footprint,
areas. So
correct.
It's not like we're having zero for those areas.
No, they're incorporated into the footprint.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. So now I want to take a little bit of time to introduce, we'll get into a lot more detail next week, but I want to at least introduce what the design concept is that we settled, as a committee settled on. Effectively, and you do have this in color in handout as well, but effectively, the parking lot is virtually the same. You're coming in, wrapping around, and coming in front.
But all new, but all new.
But it's going to be completely regraded and pitched in a way for drainage, and it's all going to be new. It's not going to be just just the same space. If you notice right here, I don't know if you can see this back here, but right here, this rectangle on your sheet is the existing building. So our new building is going to overlap a little bit right here and then go that way. And then at the point where this design was put together, before the value engineering exercise, we had the car barn moved behind the third green, that's right over there. We've subsequently moved this back to the existing car barn area over here. We didn't ask Silver to redraw this, and we didn't spend the money on it. But I wanted you to see where we were.
It was.
So the car barn currently sits here. We hoped to move it here. Because of the terrain issues and site work related with moving it there, it was going to cost too much money, so we're moving that back here. But other than that, the building we were able to keep intact. Some of the other value engineering exercises was, you could see, we've had pavers in front of the building, around the side of the building, and a whole paver back side of the building. That's significantly come down in cost because now we're doing a traditional blacktop through the entire parking lot. We've got concrete sidewalks, but not pavers, and we've got concrete for the patio area. But this was the design that we looked at. To give you a little bit more of a view, again, it's hard to see, but you can see a little bit of the rectangle of the existing building. The way that the floor plan is set up, as you come in the front of the building, the core of the building is going to be a dining room, the dining room. The kitchen is off to the right, the grill room is behind the kitchen, and then the golf activities are to the left. So you're going to come this way to go to the pro shop, which is in the corner, and your men's and ladies' locker rooms and bathrooms are in this wing. We've got a proper entryway. We've got a hallway that will lead to the grill room so that you can leave the grill room and not walk through the dining room. And if you are in the restaurant or grill room, we've got 2 bathrooms here that, if they're occupied, you can certainly make your way down and use the bathrooms here, but it's not a necessary trip. The other thing is we've set this up so that the bathrooms are first and the locker rooms and showers are behind that. So if you do go into the bathrooms, you're not walking through the locker room to get there. The other thing to talk about is with respect to the floor plan of the restaurant and the bar, the entire back side of the building is intentionally meant to look over the golf course. So you're going to have the views that we don't have today. And we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 openings that in an ideal world we'd be able to have fully opening windows. But if that's too expensive, we're going to have French doors. So that's the type of value engineering step that we went through. But it would be fantastic if we could have an open air to a patio. This box right here is covered. So we'd have partial covered seating in addition to open air seating with umbrellas as well. What's important about this layout is you'll notice that the dining room and the grill room are going to be turned so it's not a 90-degree angle. One thing that's going to do is that anyone sitting in the grill room is going to have better sight lines to the dining room and vice versa. What we really tried to avoid is creating a space, and those who live on this side of the town and remember the Angus before it became the Little Pub, you go into the Angus and the bar would be packed and the restaurant would be a ghost town. We don't want that to happen here. So by having this space be more connected, we're having this space spill into, the 2 spaces spill into each other. The other thing that's really important is this space in between the bar and the dining room can be used as overflow space, because as configured, we're going to have 120 seats in the dining room, 60 seats in the grill room, 180 total capacity. But if there's an event that has 150 people, this middle space can now still seat people in the dining room and not feel like they're in a separate room. So this was very intentionally set up in a way that gives the facility flexibility. I mentioned the two bathrooms here. In this corner, we have fireplaces. One of the things that has been mentioned to us time and time and time again is if we renovate, please save the fireplace. If we rebuild, please bring in a fireplace. It's burning tonight, but it burns 6 months out of the year. It's part of the charm of what we do have here. So we felt it was important to try and do that. The nice thing is there's not a lot of extra cost to have dual-facing fireplace. It's the same masonry work. You just have 2 fireboxes instead of 1. So we actually have an indoor fireplace, but we also have the outdoor fireplace as part of this plan. I don't think it's going to save us a lot of money to cut out 1/2 of that. So I think that's kind of a nice thing to have. But if we had to save a few $1,000s, that might be the type of VE.
What does it cost overall, though? Fireplaces. You know, here's where I'm struggling. You keep saying it's not a country club, it's not this.
Yep.
It's feeling like, oh, we gotta have a fireplace, you know?
Well, we currently have a fireplace, right?
I get it.
And there are a lot of
You can still
restaurants
have
in
a
town.
fireplace.
There are a lot of restaurants in town that have fireplaces. And I think the hope is that if we can afford to put it forward and include it in the plan, the building committee felt that it was important enough to keep in our plan. If we ultimately, this may be one of those safety valve items, though, that if we have to cut, gets cut. So this is the floor plan. You can see the locker rooms are much smaller. Our mechanicals and storage are here as well. The pro shop is going to be sitting pretty much where we are now, and it's going to have close proximity to the first tee. And then here we've got a meeting room in between the dining room and the golf operations. We've got some storage here as well. I mentioned that the ladies' groups had their lockers pulled out because they use that space for meetings regularly. The senior ladies, the 9-hole ladies, the 18-hole ladies, and the men's club and the senior men's club hold their meetings in the restaurant. That doesn't work if the restaurant's open for business. And so one of the things that we heard consistently was that if we can dedicate space for a meeting room, it would be something that they could all use. And oh, by the way, then we could give a proper locker room back to the ladies. The other nice thing is that this room will be able to be used for private events. It could be used for private dining if there's a bachelor party or something like that. That's something that can be done. The Golf Commission can have their meetings there as well. During the value engineering exercise, we looked at what it would save to cut that out, because that would actually change the footprint of the building. We'd actually shrink it, move everything this way a little bit. It wasn't a lot of square footage for the meeting room. I think it was a little over, 200,000 or 200 feet. Yeah. So it really wasn't going to save a lot of room to change the design. So we felt like the fireplace, it was something that the building committee felt strongly enough to keep in the plan. So what this looks like three-dimensionally, and again, we'll get into a lot more detail next week. This is the front of the building. As you approach the building, the kitchen is on this side, dining room in the main area, hallway to the wing that's the locker room. This has space for the mechanicals to sit on top. And then on the back side of the building, coming off the back, you've got some covered seating as well. And this would also be patio here as well. This is the pro shop in this corner. And this would be overlooking the golf course.
Are you having solar panels on the roof?
Yeah, so this, we changed this design slightly so that this roof would come all the way to the end and not be a hip style roof, but it is a gable roof, right? And therefore we'll have much more square footage to put on this particular wing.
Facing
it would
the
actually
southern
be on
exposure.
this side, because that's the side south facing that we want to capture. Yes.
Of course, this entire structure and the cart barn are fully sprinklered?
Yes, your current building is not, but it is required by code to be fully sprinkler because of the assembly use.
So I wanted to, we touched on this a lot already, so we can probably go through this quickly, but I wanted to make sure that you guys, everyone here saw the roadmap of how we, at the high-low probable stage, at the conceptual stage, the project cost looked like it was about 7.1 million. When we got the detailed estimates, that escalated to the 8.9. We looked at where the increases occurred. The big drivers were really the front portion. The professional services were about the same and the contingencies were about the same, but really the clubhouse went up by 700,000. The cart barn more than doubled, or just about doubled, and the site work went up by more than 600,000. So that's where we focused on during the value engineering stage to cut out about 1.4 million. The biggest driver being the site work. We were able to eliminate a lot of the site work expense by keeping the cart barn back over here due to all the grading issues. We eliminated the pavers. We eliminated the curbs and things that would have been nice to have, but certainly not. That would have been more the clubhouse feel that we, or the country club feel that we knew was not appropriate to put forward for approval. So we tried to bring this back down to something that was more in keeping with a municipal building. Are there any questions about this slide?
What was the total amount to move that you saved from moving the cart barn from behind 3 to its original spot?
Yeah, it was about $500,000 in total. They were, well, was it about 200,000 on the site work side as well? So all in, almost $700,000 or $800,000 by keeping it there. We really did go down quite a bit on how that will be managed, and we talked about it a little bit on the tour, but the actual foundation, the studs and the roof trusses are in adequate shape. So we would completely remove the skin, and re-side it, re-roof it, and then expand the building to be the proper size. Because right now we have about 60 carts in there that are jammed in bumper to bumper, shoulder to shoulder. We need to be able to get 80 carts in there and with the ability to drive in one side and out the other. So by keeping that there, re-skinning it, and expanding it, we've saved, $600,000 to $700,000.
Are there going to be solar panels on top of that?
Unfortunately, where the shade is, it wouldn't be cost efficient.
It doesn't have a strong southern exposure either. It's east and west, so it really is not appropriate because of its current location.
Yeah.
We were designing the new one to be facing true
Yeah.
south, which was a benefit of it, but no, the existing one faces in the wrong direction.
Yeah, if I quickly go back to the site plan, we would have had solar panels on the south-facing side of the locker rooms, but almost the entire south-facing side of the cart barn would have given us the opportunity for quite a bit of solar. But unfortunately now, with this going back over here and turning 90 degrees, that's just not a practical place to place them.
How much electricity would that save a year?
I'm sorry?
How much would that electricity would save per year if you were able to put solar panels up on top of a building that needs electricity for the carts?
Yeah, it would be material. I don't have that number, so I don't want to guess. I'm happy to go through our
I
notes.
guess the question I have is, say, is it in the range of like $50,000?
No, I don't think it's that high. I mean, Anthony, I don't know if you know what the utility bill for electricity is, but I don't think it's that high.
It's definitely not that high. I want to say it's ballpark 30,000, but don't hold it to that. I don't have the number in front of me.
The other option that we do have is that and again, I've had conversations with Scott Thompson, who's really spearheaded a lot of the solar work around town, putting the solar panels on the covered parking for the high schools and Parks and Rec. That's always an option. So that wouldn't necessarily be an incremental cost.
In the parking lot.
Right, yeah, we could certainly put it on the parking lot.
So I have a quick number for you. To get all of the panels on the cart barn of where it was proposed and over the locker room, we were able to get a 30 kW system on there, and that equates to approximately a 16-year payback without any incentive. Straight electricity savings, it was about a 16-year payback with the cart barn roof. That was approximately 2/3 of the amount of panels. So by losing the cart barn, we are losing about 2/3 of that number.
But I do think that payback number is a little bit of apples and oranges, because I know that there are incentives
Correct.
available.
I
And we
stated
do-
without
and we do have
incentives.
A program in place in town where we can leverage off of that.
Well, Mike, I guess where I'm going with it is, does the savings from putting the cart barn behind 3 with the solar savings, does it over a 20-year period pay for
The cart
much
barn?
of your cost differential for having it there?
I mean, the pro
versus
would be
not having it
thrilled,
there? And
yeah.
If you could somehow by next week try to give me some rough estimate on what that is,
Yeah.
it might make sense. What were the reasons to have it there other than the solar?
It would certainly, the pro was a big advocate for moving it. One, the main reason is because where this cart barn is set up now, we're going to eliminate the cart traffic that currently goes on that side of the building, because that's all going to be patio. So all the carts have to go around the whole parking lot effectively. So having the carts over near the parking lot would have been a much more efficient setup for the golf operations.
It eliminates the congestion of everything occurring right here
You get a
now,
better
so.
view from your patio there, as well as you get the cart barn over by the cars, which is where people take.
Correct, there was a lot of benefits,
And
getting
we
it
were
by the
putting the
cars, so
bag
there was,
storage
there was
in
a
that
lot
building as
of
well, so there
reasons
were a lot
why
of
it made
pluses.
sense, but it was financially driven to move it back.
Can you charge more for bag storage if it's over there?
Well, the golf right now, or the golf operations right now does charge for bag storage, locker room rentals. I mean, it's not a big revenue number, but it's an amenity that so many of the seniors in town and the ladies in town, like the ladies don't have bag storage currently, and they've asked for it, and they've repeatedly asked for it.
So is that in these revenue projections?
They are not, because I didn't feel like the incremental benefit was going to be materially different. Right now, we have about 80 lockers, and we're going to have about 80 lockers. So the revenue
But if we
delta.
put it over there, do you have a better opportunity?
No, we weren't sizing the space to be more than our current demand. Maybe it was going to go to 100 lockers instead of 80 if the space allowed it. But I didn't think that incremental revenue was enough of a story to try and include. And we will get to the revenue side of the things.
100 bags was the original program target, 100 bags of storage. That was the target.
Right.
Is there enough demand to fill 100 bags?
Yeah, we have 80 lockers now, or thereabouts, maybe 79 or 82 or something like that. And I think we're close to full, and then with the ladies asking for it, I think we would get to 100 pretty easily.
Right.
Yeah.
Would you be able to prepare something rough in regards to taking into account the solar savings on electricity?
I could talk to Scott and get some.
Over,
yeah.
and I guess, any bond's gonna be 20 years, so
Yeah.
I guess over a 20-year period of time.
My understanding, yeah, and I'm happy to do the research, and we're happy to get back to you. We'll be back in front of you next week, so hopefully I can do that work in the next 7 days. My understanding of how the solar programs that the town has engaged in to date, and at the high school and at Parks and Rec and around town, is that we're entering in, at no cost to the town, we're entering into a long-term power purchase agreement that allows us to lock in a power rate. I don't know if it's got an escalation factor or not, every contract's different, but the important part of it is we wouldn't be, we're not out of pocket to install those. We as a town currently are not out of pocket to install those solar panels. And we're locking in a predictable low versus today's market, and likely lower still versus 10 years from now energy market. I don't think that we would, as a town, want to consider buying the equipment ourselves and installing it with a 16-year payback period. So I think if we're getting the solar panels at no out-of-pocket cost, whether it's on the existing building or in the parking lot, I'm guessing that any incremental, really the analysis is compare our best guess at rates versus the PPA rate, pull that back and compare that to a $600,000 additional expense to move the car park. I don't think there's any rate difference that's going to change that equation. I'm happy to do the math, I'm happy to do the research.
Yeah, I mean, I think Public Works is here, right? You guys can help them with that number?
Correct.
Based on the size of square footage, and you have the consultants that you guys use all the time on that stuff, right?
Yes, we do.
All right, would you be able to assist them and see what the delta would be?
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe.
What other revenue opportunities are there? That
So-
were, if we, yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
Are we getting around? Slide 18 is 3 hours later.
So what the golf, or what the building committee considered was four legs to the stool in terms of the revenue story. The first is, we've talked about it, we just touched on it a little bit, operating and maintenance expense savings. This building is old, and there's roughly a $14,000 to $15,000 a year, if not more, O&M expense, just to try and keep this building up. DPW is up here quite a bit, servicing the furnace or fixing a plumbing issue or electrical or whatever it is. That together with the efficiencies of a new building are going to have some savings. We are going to be a bigger building, so it's not going to be a direct, there's going to be an offset to that, right? But on slide 19, what we put together was kind of like the high-low probable analysis, kind of a pessimistic, realistic, and optimistic scenario on what these four categories might deliver. And realistically, we think that we're probably got about a $20,000 to $22,000 savings on maintenance that's not going to be necessary for a while, and some efficiencies on the energy side. The second biggest category is really from the golf outings. And we touched on that a little bit. Right now, we do 1 to 2, 2 to 3 outings per year. Sterling Farms is doing, is it 25 to 30?
Yes.
Tashua Knolls is doing more than 20. The neighboring courses are doing 20 to 25, and some are 40 outings a year. We're not, we're not competing for that business because we can't attract it. Nobody wants to have an event here. But if we build the space that can accommodate that, Parks and Rec, together with the Golf Commission, have signed on to the idea of putting together a marketing plan that goes out and attracts these events. There's no reason why the Fairfield Realtors Association should be going up to Whitney Farms in Monroe, or other Fairfield organizations. So the expectation is that realistically, early stages, we could attract pessimistically 6 outings a year, realistically 12, and then optimistically 18. I think longer term, the number's even more than that, but we tried to put that together, some numbers that were realistic. From a revenue perspective, each outing is going to be between $7,000 and $9,000 for the town. That's just the golf piece. But to be fair, we have to figure that if we have a golf outing, we have to take into consideration that the course is closed to the general public, so we're losing that revenue. So clearly, it's normal course for a golf course to have outings on a day that is slow.
Mondays.
So incrementally, we expect that each outing is going to be incremental revenue of about $3,200 an event. So multiply that by 12 events, and you've got roughly $40,000 of incremental revenue associated with golf outings. Now, per year. And as this gets traction, it's very realistic that if we go up to 18 rounds, that's a $90,000 number. That's not going to be out of the gate, but certainly if the Parks and Rec and Golf Commission put forward a marketing plan that goes after the Fairfield Realtors or Rotary or others, there is a revenue opportunity there.
I got a question. Or
Go ahead.
comment and a question. Most golf outings on public courses, aren't they usually on Mondays?
Mondays or Tuesdays, yep.
Okay. I mean, I would be just Parks and Rec, if you're listening, very hesitant to be closing down this golf course on a Friday or Saturday.
Oh, yeah,
for
yeah.
golf.
And-
I don't think they would do
Yeah,
that.
right now, the Golf Commission does have a policy that talks about, they'd love to have outings, but it's limited to, right now, I believe it's limited to Mondays.
Mondays?
Yeah.
Mondays right now, correct.
So that's the second leg of the stool. The third leg of the stool is the rent from the concessionaire.
big stool.
Right now, the concessionaire pays roughly $36,000 a year. Just on a cost per square foot basis, with the larger kitchen and the larger restaurant and bar area, same square footage, the rent would go up by $20,000 a year. Now, if someone is really interested in a new space, they may bid more aggressively, and they may bid $40,000 more a year. However, everyone knows and understands that this contract is subject to an RFP process. So there's nothing that this committee can do to say you will definitely get X. It's going to be whatever the concessionaire is willing to bid and how much competition there is out there. But I do feel like the math that went into these assumptions is sound and solid.
Let me ask a question on the estimated number of rounds.
Yeah.
42,500, you have that going up?
As a general rule of thumb, Tom, the golf course tries to operate between 40 and 45,000 rounds.
Right.
I think the second half of 2018 and going into 2019, because of the weather that we've had the last 5 months, I don't think the golf course will get to 40,000 rounds. So the golf operations are going to struggle this fiscal year. But as a general rule, going back in time, 40 to 45,000 rounds is realistic. Back in the heyday, they were over 50,000. But what Peter Grace determined a while back, and I'm borrowing some knowledge from my golf commission days, once you get over 45,000 rounds, you start to put a lot of wear and tear on the golf course, which then requires more maintenance. So if the golf commission does exactly what they're hoping to do, they're going to target their pricing so that they get 40 to 45,000 rounds a year. So we picked 42.5 as a middle ground on those numbers.
But does that mean that you're increasing the rate by 2 times?
Yeah, so
$2.
$2.
Oh,
$2 per round.
Right. So what became clear is that, this is likely the biggest driver of them all. How much is the user of the space going to be willing to pay to use the course? It's a usage fee effectively.
So my only comment on this is, you open this presentation with all the great things you've done with the course. Over the last 10 years, we've put money into it.
The town,
Right,
not
the town.
this committee,
Well,
the town.
the
Yeah.
golf committee and the town.
Yeah.
We've done that all with this crappy building,
Yeah.
right? So I honest to God don't see building a building is gonna make people pay more to play golf. And you just said it's not going to, this building isn't going to increase the number of rounds substantially.
Right.
Because you don't want it to go up substantially.
Right.
So I question that.
Well-
I question the green fees numbers, I really do.
So
Why?
let's talk about that for a second, because
Well, I mean,
one of the
you think
things.
most people are coming here is like, oh, I think I'll go play H. Smith Richardson because I like the golf course, or you like the bar.
Like both.
Right.
Not 40,000.
I think it's really important to touch on this point a little bit, because one of the things that I think this committee heard from various town bodies and folks on town bodies was, one, what revenue is going to help support this expense? And two, where should it come from? And one of the sentiments that we heard was that the people who use it should be those who are paying for it. And the way that you do that is through an increase to the rates. Now, the Golf Commission, this is beyond the purview of this building committee, but the Golf Commission has met. They discussed this very point. What they did was they put together, like the Golf Commission did in 2009, put together a 10-year improvement plan for the course. They put together a 7-year rate plan. Now, each commission, as I understand it, each year has to vote on the rates. So it's nothing more than a roadmap of what they can follow. But what they discussed as a commission, and I have attended the last 4 golf commission meetings because this has been a topic, was that next year, if construction starts at December 1st, it doesn't affect the golf operation. So rates are going to go up like they normally go up. They typically go up, some years nothing, some years $1, some years it's up for residents, but not for seniors. They've got a whole formula as to what they follow. But the year of construction, the intention per their plan, which they voted on and approved, is just hold it flat. They're not going to try and raise rates during a year of construction. It just doesn't make sense. Coming off that, however, in the first year that the facility is open, they've put in their 7-year plan a $2 increase. And that's really the impetus for this, and again, it's what's optimistic, realistic, or pessimistic. So that is part of what they are considering. To your point, however, anybody who plays golf here is not volunteering how much they're going to pay. I think I'll pay $38 today. No, I'll pay $40 because it's a new clubhouse. It has to be dictated by the rates that are set by the commission. They do an exhaustive study every single year of the surrounding golf courses, and they look at the rates in comparison to their competition. Whether it's Tashua Knolls, Westport, Norwalk, Stamford, the municipal golf courses. They're not trying to compete with certain courses like a Great River, because that's more of a high-end daily fee course. But they know their market, and
It's market rate is what you're trying to get to.
Right, and what they found was that right now and again, there are a whole different categories: seniors, juniors, ladies, 18 holes, 9 holes, midday, weekend. There are all kinds of different pieces to this Chinese menu. But what they found was they could afford to raise rates by a couple of dollars and not go out of bounds with their competition. They may, 3 years from now, go through that same exercise and feel like, okay, the other courses have not raised rates, so we can't afford to either.
But it's easier to do it when A, you've maintained the property, and then B, you've invested in the building.
Right.
So it's much easier to say, this is, A, do we have a market rate facility? So can we charge market rate for that facility?
Right. And I think if the extra $2 was going to put them out of market, they would have balked more. And I think they'll pay close attention to what the rates are. But to the extent that they can be within that box, but on the upper range of that box to help support this project, they're willing to do that.
So after a $7 million investment in a new building, we're going to get $166,000 a year, and we make 1.936 revenue today, including ID cards and stuff like that. So.
Yep. Go ahead, Chisholm.
So I just have a general comment, and this is going to be sacrilegious because I'm here with a lot of golfers, but everything that I've heard is that golfing overall, the number of people golfing, the number of rounds they play, looking into the future, people aren't taking the time to golf.
Yep.
Country club memberships are down.
They are.
And you mentioned in our heyday, we had 50,
56, 52, yep.
rounds, and
Yep.
now we're at 40, 45.
Yep.
I mean, trending, we're looking at the 20-year bonding
Yeah.
for this. Are we confident? And I mean, I'm sure that the Golf Commission has looked at this. Are we confident that people are going to continue to golf
Yeah.
at a rate that's going to make this investment in this facility truly, that we'll get a true return on that investment?
Well, I think the history proves the country clubs, but the people who don't play country clubs anymore are not coming back to us.
But are they, like, I'd be interested in
They are.
seeing numbers of golfers that really what the trend is for golfing. Because
Yeah.
everything that I've heard or read is that the trend is going downward.
Yeah. That's a great question to ask, and I can tell you with confidence that we've gone through that cycle already, and we have the history to support where we are today and how we got there. If you remember, I guess it was 2007, 2008 with the financial crisis, right? There was a relatively large and steady retreat from private country clubs. There were some clubs like Patterson and Brooklawn, not necessarily Sasko, but there was Patterson, Brooklawn lost membership. Those members came here. So while other private clubs were seeing a decline in membership, let alone play, we saw a very steady number of rounds. It was at the same time that the town was putting money back into work on drainage
Right,
and bunkers
right.
and tee boxes and improve the quality. So I think our timing couldn't have been better in that regard, because we've seen that steady
But
play.
accounting for that,
Yeah.
accounting for we went through a fiscal crisis,
Mhm.
accounting for the reduced
Yeah.
private memberships,
Yeah.
accounting for people coming here,
Yeah.
looking forward, has
Yeah.
research, I'm sure research has been done, not just Fairfield, but kind of
Mhm.
nationwide as a trend,
Yeah.
golfing.
Mhm.
Are we going to maintain what we have and then actually grow it, to
Yeah.
your point?
I don't think anybody's advocating to get us back to 56,000 rounds. One, to your point, golf industry is not growing. It's steady state or declining. It has been declining for a number of years. Secondarily, I think because we saw the maintenance issue when the rounds were above 45,000 rounds, I think the superintendent did a nice job of identifying at the breaking point where let's maximize revenues to 40 to 45,000 rounds. And if we start to see more than 45,000 rounds, we know that we can start to increase rates to try and bring that back down that way, but still maximizing revenue. But I really do think that in Fairfield and Fairfield County, a quality municipal golf course that is surrounded by private clubs will always have an influx of members who are leaving the private clubs to play a quality municipal golf course. I think this is a pretty safe place for a quality municipal golf course to set up shop and operate.
So basically, it's historical data. All we have to really go on is just the historical data. And for the last 20 years, it's pretty much maintained and has gotten better. We peaked,
Yeah.
and now for the last 5 or 6 years, they've maintained where they are. Now, whether 3 years ago, I played Christmas Day and New Year's Day out here. Probably not going to be able to do that this year. So, weather makes it expand and contract as well. So, and we have no control over that. But if you come up here, this place, getting tee times up here is not an easy thing to do. Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Right.
This place is packed.
The other thing that I think I'm sorry, yes.
Well, just to the point about the number of rounds and sort of golf in general, right? How long did it take to get from the 50s into the 40s? Because I guess the question is if we hold in the 40s for, say, the next 20 years, and
Yep.
we've outlived the life of this package
Yep.
of bonding.
Yep.
But if that were to decline, and along with that, you found an inability to simply raise rates to cover it,
Yeah.
then we would have a problem on the revenue side.
Yeah.
Forget about the revenue, the
Yep.
expansion.
Say it again,
of
Dave?
it. If the number of rounds was going down, and your typical thing with glass, you just simply, increase it. But you hit a point where you can't increase it even by $1 or $2 because you're trying to salvage the number of rounds that you have.
Yeah.
But if you tell me.
Price
if you say-
elasticity.
Yeah.
Yeah, if
right.
you say that that 50 to, if you say the 50 to 40 drop to 30 years, well,
Yeah.
okay, we're talking a 20-year bond. So even if it slid a couple thousand rounds, it's
Right.
not going to be as drastic.
Right.
But if we think 10 years from now, we're going to be in the low to mid-30s, that would be problematic.
Yeah, but I think one of the things we have to consider on that, and this is like the doomsday scenario, okay, so don't I'll be the heretic here, right? If we got into a situation where golf went away, right, that this was unsustainable, you're sitting on massive real estate assets here. And if the town had to, they could sell the asset to either another golf course or a school or
just a real estate developer.
a real estate
That's what we
development.
want more.
So you're not going to lose, from that perspective, I'm not saying I like the ROI on this.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I am not concerned about losing the money here.
Yeah.
We're going to get the money back, whether we're operating it over a 20-year period or whether you're selling the asset.
The other thing to keep in mind is that to address your question about how long did it take, you have to go back 18, 20 years, 15, 18, 20 years before you saw anything in the 50,000 round range. So we've been pretty consistently in that 40 to 45,000 range for 10 years or more. And maybe even going back to 15 years. And we do have those statistics. I don't have them with me at the moment, but I have them on my laptop, and I could probably pull them up, but that's a different story. But I think the important thing to understand is that while the golfing industry in generally has declined, it also has somewhat steadied. And I think, again, to my earlier point, I think in Fairfield County, a municipal golf course is a pretty safe place. This is being managed to 40 to 45,000 rounds on purpose. And I'm fairly confident that the Golf Commission has done a masterful job of doing that rate study and making sure that they keep it. The other part is to understand is the mix of what that 40 to 45,000 rounds is made up of. Roughly two-thirds resident rate rounds and about one-third non-resident rounds. The non-resident rounds are key because it helps subsidize the revenue base that helps keep rates lower for residents. But when we see poor conditions or other issues that challenge the golf operations, it's the non-revenue rounds that shrink. We've got a dedicated 30,000 round, 30 to 32,000 round base of residents that play year in and year out.
Listen, the sport's going to go to 14 holes. You can sell 4 holes.
From the peanut gallery back there. Okay, so I'm happy to spend more time on the numbers, but these are just a couple of slides that we actually presented back in May. Is the clubhouse renovation even a viable option or replacement needed? I think we've addressed that question.
Yeah, we don't need to go through these. I don't
Okay,
think.
so those are some Q&A that we did. Next steps are, we've put the paperwork in for after this progress report will be in front of you in a week's time, and the Board of Selectmen a week from tomorrow, and the RTM on December 10th, with a hear and consider of what this plan is in more detail. It's actually going to be a show that these two gentlemen are presenting, and it's really going to give you more color about what it is that $7.6 million gets.
Curious, this is the first time seeing this. Why are we seeing it before the Board of Selectmen?
Because you guys schedule meetings before the Board of Selectmen. I don't understand how that happens.
Not true.
So I don't know how it happens.
Until January.
Yeah.
The Board of Selectmen.
If we don't get to you guys first, then we don't get to you until January. And one of the things that we're really concerned about is we set on our schedule to come to all the town bodies with a hear and consider in December and act and vote in January. We really feel like it's important to stick to that schedule because we have to get through those detailed design development drawings. We have to get construction documents and RFPs out. We have to get the bids for the general contractor, and actually, it's really important that we begin construction about a year from now, because we want to get the foundations poured before the winter so work could continue through the winter. If we miss that window, we may end up having a 4 or 5 month delay, and then we end up losing the whole, getting that much further behind. I think so far we've stayed pretty darn close to the schedule that we outlined at the beginning of this process. The other really important cost factor associated with that is for a project of this size, correct me if I've got it wrong, Dean, but it's going to cost about $40,000 per month for every month delay that we have. So part of managing the $7.6 million cost is making sure that we stay on track and on schedule. So if we don't get to you guys next week and have you guys vote one way or the other, thumbs up, thumbs down.
Wait, we can't vote next week.
No. Hear and consider next week, but we don't want to come to any of the town bodies and ask you to vote in the same night that we present. So we're giving you guys the hear and consider, all 3 bodies hear and consider in December, and we're asking all 3 bodies to vote and act in January.
So this is the first I'm seeing that you're coming back before us, before the Board of Selectmen?
I talked to Mike about it. He was okay so long as there was no action or vote.
I don't care whether Mike's okay.
Understand.
And I don't care, I mean, of course he's okay if there's no action or vote, because there can't be. So my concern is that, and I understand what you're trying to do, depending on what happens when the Board of Selectmen votes, you might be representing this to us in January anyway, based on their vote.
Yeah, well, I think when we get to January, we're Board of Selectmen first. If they vote thumbs down, we cancel with you guys and we have to go back. to
No, that's not what I'm saying.
Okay.
I'm saying if we have a conversation in full on the 4th, and then the Board of Selectmen has a different conversation on the 5th
Yep.
in full, and they give you different marching orders, you're going to go after their marching orders, as you should, because you got to get through them first, right? And then you're going to have to come back to us in January
For another consider and
for
possibly
another
come back on.
consider.
That's correct.
Right.
Right. But based on the information and because we have updated all the bodies, and unfortunately you guys are last because of the situation, so far our marching orders are to continue in the processes we have. Everybody on all three bodies is aware of where we are at this point, as you are now.
Yep.
Mr. Bateson has left. I would love for him to still be here and tell you.
Yep.
But we have presented to the Board of Selectmen. and-
Where's Mr. Tetra?
Yeah, where's
Are you there?
Mike?
I thought he was going to be here.
Yeah. So, you know, we are under the impression that, yes, we will present to you, and yes, we will present to the Board
He
of
wasn't
Selectmen
here.
the following day, and that nothing will change. That is the impression that we have gotten so far moving forward, and that is from that body the last two times that we've met with them. So it could change, yep, on the, you know, we could see them on that Wednesday, and they could say, well, hold on, we want to restart and redo, and then we've got to have a whole different
All right, before I
conversation.
agree to put it on our agenda, just because I don't want to waste your time and I don't want to waste our time,
Yeah.
I'm going to reach out to the Board of Selectmen
Okay.
and ask them, Mr. Mayor, let's do that tomorrow.
Yeah, no, I mean, because they have to come before us once more.
Right.
Well, I think that the instructions that the committee is trying to follow is that we shouldn't be asking any board, whether it's Board of Finance, Board of Selectmen, or the RTM, to hear for the first time the formal presentation about what this will be and vote on the same night. So we're trying to do it over 2 months.
What are you telling
My
us
question-
next
yeah, What
week?
more are you going to tell us next week that you haven't told us?
It's really going to get into a lot more. Tonight was about a progress report and the numbers that went into a lot of this. I think next week is to kind of get into a lot more detail about
The building.
the building itself. You know, what it looks like. how this is
Craig, I
developed.
don't know that that's necessary. I think with this, I'll speak for myself and my board, please feel free. It's about the numbers now.
Right.
It's about an economic analysis that shows us the various scenarios.
Okay.
What goes into this. Does anybody disagree?
No.
It's
I know
about
I need to know.
some of the things that Mr. Walsh talked about the solar thing, and some of those open items.
Okay.
But truthfully, I don't think, it doesn't benefit me to say, hey, here's what the bathroom looks like. And I'm not trying to be facetious,
Sure.
I'm just like,
Okay.
from that
We
perspective.
don't want to waste your time, so.
No, and it's not a waste, it's just, you guys are impaneled, you've done a good job. We understand, we asked a lot of questions tonight.
Yep.
Now it's about the economics and what has been considered and what has been deleted. I don't want to waste your time and have you come back multiple times either. I really don't.
Okay.
I tend to agree. I think you've done a tremendous job tonight. I think you justified and explained the cost differentials. I mean, personally, I think there's a real need to do it. And I understand, I have some concerns about the costs also, but I don't need another detailed presentation about, like you
So I
said,
guess,
Mr. Flynn, about the bathrooms
question
and
that
things
we
like
would
that.
have is then so if there's specific things that you would want.
Well, that's what I want to do
Right.
now.
Could you get those to, or you want to go over them now?
I
or
want to
you wanna
go
get
around the
those-
table now.
Okay.
And then I want to give my members 24 hours to come back and give me more.
That would be
Okay?
fabulous.
And to give them to Mr. Mayor and I.
Yeah.
And then you don't need, I don't think you need to come next week. I think you need to come in January and feed us information between now and January.
Will you be in a position to act on the bonding resolution in January?
Sure.
Consider,
Why not?
Board of Selectmen's not going to operate after the vote on the January.
Yeah, well.
They
After the Board of
will be, the Board of
Right.
Selectmen will act and consider in January.
Correct. Right, but our meeting is first Tuesday in January.
You're not going to solve that. That doesn't get solved regardless right now, right?
It's just a timing
I
thing.
talked to Mike today. about
Is your
the
meeting in front of the Board of Selectmen meeting in January as well?
I have no
There's
idea.
all these agendas, and I got a little confused.
Right.
So I specifically went to Tetro, and I said, what is your plan from now? He said, Craig, what you said, he wants the Board of Selectmen. Mike is the Board of Selectmen, Mr. Flynn is the Board of Finance.
I understand.
Okay, so he did say that he wanted the Board of Selectmen to hear it once before a vote day,
Correct.
right? And he also said that he wanted to hear it, that he was gonna hear it in December, and he was gonna vote in January.
Now, and let me say this, they saw this presentation in September.
Right, not as detailed, because there's a
Right, we
lot
weren't
that's
that far.
occurred since
Right,
December.
and that's one of the reasons we delayed it, is because you said, Tom, I'm gonna have much better and more concrete numbers and
Yeah.
information.
Yeah.
If we wait later.
First column,
Right?
7.1.
And our conversation is, when are you gonna be asking for money, Craig?
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not gonna be asking until December, January, and I said, well, then seeing the presentation in November with the best available information
Yep.
makes better sense.
Yeah.
Right? Mr. Tetro heard it in September, and now he's saying, we've got better information, we need to hear it.
He's hearing it.
They're gonna hear this, they'll hear this.
So as typical, we're the more efficient board. I understand that.
But there were a lot of open questions that you guys didn't have answered because you didn't get the benefit of September. Like, we were.
That's fine, but this has been perfect, but I think now it becomes, you've got to run the traps.
Yep.
How you do that, you're not, we legally cannot vote on anything till the Board of Selectmen does,
Totally get that.
right? So I can't resolve that, that's up to them to resolve.
Right.
What we can do is give you our thoughts tonight and
Yep.
questions that we would like it asked, addressed,
Yep.
asked and answered before you come before us in January. And then, unless people completely disagree, and assuming that we get our questions answered, unless the Board of Selectmen throws a monkey wrench into this, I don't know why we cannot vote on this, right, in the same night we hear the next presentation. Does anybody have a reason that we can't?
We're not gonna vote for the Board of Selectmen.
I already said that. I mean, that's, I'm not going to
It
worry
looks
about
like the
that.
first
But do
Tuesday
you-
is January 8th.
I'm sorry, I'm
so-
confused.
Right.
Do you only have one
Ray
meeting
keeps
in
saying
January?
he's going
And is
to-
it definitely before the Board of Selectmen meeting? in-
I have no idea whether it's before the Board of Selectmen.
They're not
It is.
posted, I don't see it on the calendar.
Yeah, we haven't voted on the calendar yet.
Yeah.
Can't they do it the
It's a new calendar.
week of December?
Because I
They
think
have
our,
a meeting that they could vote is on December 19th, it's scheduled, but
Yeah, you have to check
that's
that
a
out.
fact. It's also a fact that Tetro said he's going on in January. So-
Right. And
So-
part of that is because
So
I-
if we wanted
we-
to accelerate the process, it would be talk to the first selectman after your presentation on Wednesday to see if you can get them to vote on the 19th, and then this body could vote in January.
Right.
It's actually not accelerating, it's to keep your schedule.
yeah,
Well,
what
that- I
I'm,
mean-
what we're,
December so
what we're
that we
very
could vote in
concerned about is
January,
slipping to February.
There
before we-
there has
in the
been
RTM.
times in the past,
Yep.
okay, and I'm
Yep.
not offering this because I'm talking, because my board's here, but this board has been very accommodating previously to schedule a special meeting where it's in the best interest of the town. So go speak with Mr. Tetro.
Yep. Okay.
See if they'll vote on the 19th. If they've already had presentation after presentation on this, maybe you'll get them to vote on the 19th.
Yep.
And then we can do it at our regularly scheduled meeting.
The first
But-
week in January, or January, okay.
Does that make sense?
It makes
And that
total
way,
sense.
you guys don't have to do
Right.
multiple presentations.
Right.
And
Okay, yeah.
just- But I think, I do want to go around the table and make sure we have questions asked and answered.
Sure, yeah.
All right? Mrs. Esmond, do you have specific questions you would like?
And I'm happy to receive questions via email after the fact, and we can have a conversation.
Thank you. What we will do is if that takes place, that'll come through Mr. Mayor.
Okay.
Because I need to make sure that everybody gets shared, okay?
Yep.
So that's our process.
So, you know,
Yeah.
I would say any other costs, any other offsets, so that value engineering is not line itemed, so, you know, there may.
So you want the
other-
line items?
We have that detailed. We
Yeah,
can talk
so-
about it now, or we can provide it.
Provided.
Okay.
Yeah, no, provided, along the same lines as the cart barn with the solar
Solar.
panels. So anything else within that value engineering, where we need to look again at, rather than just taking these reductions, is there an offset?
Mhm.
So that's a general way to ask that question.
Okay.
And then I assume the next time you come before us with more detailed numbers, there will be a lot more line items, right? I mean,
Sure.
I don't know how finite you get, like you were talking about the choice between two different flooring materials. I mean, I don't know how
Right.
detailed the next presentation will be.
Isn't the number 7.6 million?
That's
Is that-
it.
yeah,
It's a-
that-
it's
I
a
mean,
bonding
I-
resolution.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
That's
that-
the number we got. We're
Yeah.
not gonna vote on
Yeah, we're not.
concrete
No, I
versus
mean, I'm just
asphalt.
thinking
or
about,
whatever.
We could, if you look
Comparable.
at value
I think
engineering, you can
asphalt
see where we were, where we were, and where we'll end up, where we are now, but
We could,
in all honesty, we get to choose whether it's a hardwood floor or a vinyl floor, you don't.
right. But
So,
in other
but
words,
that-
I'm just looking at any place where we can capture more, so less along these lines, more along the lines of the cart barn with the panels.
Right.
The other offsets.
We can still send you the value engineering, it's just a.
We would like to see that.
it's more than that, too. I think we can provide some type of list that shows the type of finishes that we have. So it's a vinyl, acoustic vinyl, wood-looking but vinyl floor. It's not hardwood, it's not marble, right? We can come up with, it's a ceramic tile, it's not granite, you know?
Don't, Craig, just get us the value engineering and get us the,
Okay.
yeah.
I hope a board understands, we are not using marble or granite or any of this other stuff, so.
Ms. Marmion.
I think you did a great job. It was
Yeah.
very
Thank you.
thorough and thoughtful, and I really appreciate all the work that you and the entire committee put forth for us this evening. And given the thoroughness, I mean, you've answered a lot of our questions. I think drilling down even further, it's basically cost versus revenue.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the drill down that I'm interested in.
Yeah.
I've got a lot of information. Anything else that you think might help us? So that we can make that overall decision?
Right. The one thing that I think might provide some assistance, and it gets to both of your points, we have available, going back, I think we ran out of data going back more than 18 years, but it's 18 or 19 years of number of rounds, number of revenue number, expense number, surplus that the clubhouse has generated.
Craig, I was going to let this lie, but you brought it back up.
Yeah.
When I first got on the board, which is going on 12 years ago now, longer, we looked at those numbers, and I worked very closely with Jerry Lombardo. Those numbers going back too far were not complete, because they didn't include a lot of the expenses related to the golf course that were
Yep.
carried on the
Yep.
town side.
Yep.
So I don't know that when you're going back 20 years, you're comparing apples to apples. I think it was a number of years ago,
Yeah.
when it did, they started to carry things like the unemployment and stuff.
Yep.
They still don't carry some of the DPW stuff that is
Yep.
done up here.
Yep.
But be careful going back 20
Yeah.
years. I would think the revenue and the rounds is pertinent information. I would have less reliability,
Right.
quite candidly, on the bottom line
Yep,
contribution.
and I do know that there was an effort as part of that 10-year plan
Yeah.
exercise 9 years ago to try and add those line items of
Yes.
unemployment compensation and other things. Bonding was not part of
And we
the-
see that
you know,
annually.
so
Yeah.
I take your point, but the good thing is, at least for the last 9 years, it's been a fully loaded number.
Agreed.
Absent some, work that DPW does, but the surpluses that have been the largest have been in the last 5 years.
No, I agree.
The only thing I want to add is that I've heard a lot, you talk about going to the grocery store and people stopping you
Yeah.
and say, hey, what's going on with this? I'm hearing a lot from people in terms of feeling like the increase in fees for various things, boat slips and,
Yeah.
green fees, et cetera. I wonder what that ceiling is, and that's my only concern, is that we need to, people will pay more for a more beautiful facility, but
Yeah.
there is some exhaustion out there, and who is going to be paying those fees? Who can afford to pay those fees? So
Yeah.
I'm conscious of that, and I don't know if we trend that out or if the Gulf Commission has looked at what is the ceiling, but I think we have to be cognizant of how people in this town are feeling in terms of, their residents, and they're being asked to pay more. So
Well, I
I
think
just
that
want to throw that out
The
there.
Golf Commission, I think, because of the
Market
research they
study?
do,
Yeah.
with the market study, so if Tashua goes up, we go up.
You realize.
If Tashua doesn't go up, then maybe we
Never
don't.
mind, I'll talk to you later.
Because you have to be competitive with your neighbors on that. So, where the fees ceiling is, I don't think anybody knows until the consumer decides that they hit it.
Right.
Because again, some people pay $135 for a round of golf.
True.
And some people pay 30.
So
So it's all in the, and people from Fairfield play both.
Right.
I
You know,
just
the
don't
place-
want to penalize people, they want to play golf on a beautiful course.
Yeah.
It goes to Mr. DeWitt's comment before.
Right.
So they're not necessarily paying for the restaurant. We want to be fair to our residents and not out-fee them.
Right.
From paying,
It's
taking
a-
advantage of a Fairfield course.
It's a catch-22, not just for this committee, but also for the Golf Commission, because I take your point, and your point is exactly the point that Ryan Scully, from the chairman of the Golf Commission, made. He does not want to price a $5 increase to help subsidize or pay for this facility. One, because $5 won't cover the whole cost anyway, but two, we may start to see a decline in rounds and unhappy constituents, right? So, or part.
You got to know what the
patrons.
market rate is, and
Right.
to your point,
And
it
they-
sounds like they do.
They do.
Some of the other things, the question is, and what we've always asked is, are you charging market rate?
Right.
Because when you're providing a service at less than market rate, whether you mean to or not, you're subsidizing that
Right.
through your tax dollars. And that's even less fair than charging the golfers. So the key is really making sure that you're not
That we're hitting it.
outpacing the market.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I agree
Right.
with that.
And I do think that, I mentioned it earlier, but when the Golf Commission considered their 7-year rate plan, they really did look at where they were, and they would not have agreed to a 2-year rate increase 2 years from now if that put them out of market. They felt like there was room in comparison to their competition to accommodate that, and let's not leave that revenue on the table. That was the thought
But the
process.
point is very valid, and I know Mr. Walsh has raised that point. Other people, as regards fees around town, whether it be fire alarms, we're
Right.
hearing that a lot. You're right.
And we are not the most expensive golf course, neither are we the cheapest in the area. So
Right.
we're in that middle ground, which seems to work for us.
Do you have a document to show what we are comparatively to other communities, the other municipalities?
Can we ask the Golf Commission?
Golf Commission has
Can we have
that.
that produced?
Yeah,
to us
we can send it over.
within
Thank
the
you.
next couple of days?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Matola.
No, I think your presentation was terrific, and
Thank you.
I want to know about the solar, moving the barn, just
Okay.
for kicks, get those numbers. But other than that, I don't think I have any more questions.
Mr. Walsh?
I have some questions. So where do we stand within the 10-year capital plan improvement where we're giving you about $1 million a year? When does that end?
Yeah, again,
No,
speaking.
125,
I'm sorry,
100.
100,000.
Yeah, 100,000 a year. I'm speaking,
Scared me there.
that's beyond the scope of this committee, but because I know the
Well,
answer.
Anthony,
Yeah,
anybody who has the
we got
knowledge-
1 year to go, right?
Correct.
Yeah, we've got 1 year to go.
So then we stop that, so that's money that we can apply towards this.
Yeah.
That's okay. What?
No, they're gonna.
We're gonna present another one. I mean, are you gonna be presenting another one, or where do we stand? Will you have gotten your projects completed?
Well, the commission's reevaluating it now. The project.
That would be a no.
The projects have been completed to date, we're through year 9, up to year 9 now. But again, there's still things, cart path, there's always things that need to be done. It's annual maintenance.
Like this
so-
building is to be.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I mean, we defer.
And one thing I will say is that when we put that first 10-year plan together, and I was on the commission at the time, so I can now put my other hat on, part of the research that we did was that the United States Golf Association has an expected life for sand traps that have to have drainage in order to, rainwater or otherwise. They'll typically last 8 to 10 years before they have to be redone. And so all that bunker work that was done 7 years ago, we may need to start to put, now, we don't need to do all 44 on the golf course, but I wouldn't be surprised if the Golf Commission started to say, okay, yes, some of the work that was done 9 years ago, 8 years ago, 7 years ago has to be retouched. Bigger items, big ticket items, not so much, but maybe it's a $50,000 a year number.
Greg, at what point, though, does that maintenance expense become an expense of the golf course? And it's
Versus
put
bonding.
Yeah.
Versus bonding it?
Completely
And it's
agree.
put into our expenses? 'Cause
Yeah.
if you're telling me that that's going to be the case,
Yep.
then that's a number that should be at.
Jim,
Like paving.
if I were on the Golf Commission, I would come to you and say, don't bond it, give me an extra $50,000 a year.
Wasn't the $100,000 a year, we were behind the 8 ball 9 years ago.
We were.
We weren't doing what we were supposed to be doing.
Yes.
And so, but now it's a little different.
Correct.
Now it's about maintenance as opposed to rehab.
Yeah,
It's a very different
Although, and I don't
equation.
know whether this, I mean, the Carl Dickman Golf Course was a little bit rough shape this summer, just,
Yeah, that, I agree.
One of the slides that we kind of blew by
Yep.
was on page 16, the other projected cost considerations, the septic, and we haven't really talked about septic.
Yep.
We talked about it in regards to if we have to move
Yep.
up the hill.
Yeah.
We would need to install a septic system.
Yep.
How are you going to get away with not having to put a current septic system in?
Yeah, I'm gonna-
That meets the requirements of a brand-new building.
Yep.
Which I think our health department, from working with other clients on other buildings and things in town.
Right.
Requires us to step up to current
We-
standards.
We've done the legwork, Jim, and we have the answers. So,
What is that?
do you want to address this, or do you?
Yeah, no, we did perform testing on your existing system, and it was determined that your system has longevity still. We are going to be embellishing the system with expanding the secondary leaching fields by adding just one more galley in, but through a testing process, we determined that the existing system is more than adequate for the proposed building.
And those
So we did our due
conversations-
diligence
Yeah.
with that testing.
And the health department's fine with you
The health
adding
department
one
is
more
on,
galley?
they are on board, correct.
Okay, I can talk to them more about that offline.
Yep.
Yep.
And the other thing to take away, or make sure everyone understands, is some of the odor issues that this building is currently experiencing, it's a plumbing issue, it's not a septic issue. Part of the plan would be to replace all the plumbing, obviously, all the way out to just beyond the car park. It's at that point, there's a junction and a manhole cover 100 yards that way, where we would then start to leverage what's still good. But 100 yards that way, coming this way, it's all new.
And all those figures are in the numbers that you've given us?
Yes.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay. What about you listed geotechnical survey, what is that?
Yeah, so that's basically testing for the ledge in the rock. I mean, one of the...
You've done that?
Yes.
You've done
Yeah,
that work,
we
okay.
drilled and putting carts underneath the building is just not a feasible option, but it's probably the best of both worlds in terms of what we got back, because the ledge is at a certain place where it's not going to impede
Not going to affect our footings.
Right.
Okay. And then the DPW engagement for parking lot site work, I don't remember you discussing that.
Correct. That's not something we touched on. Joe Michelangelo is here. We shared with, knowing that the DPW group did this site work in the parking lot for Penfield, Hal reached out, and we've had multiple conversations, and gave the necessary information to Joe to price out and consider carving away from the general contractor's responsibilities and have that sourced in-house. And we believe, and Joe, correct me if I've got the number wrong, but I think it's about just under a $300,000 total cost and about a $200,000 savings off of what the third party's estimates were.
Correct, just to elaborate that. So Public Works would serve as a general contractor on the parking lot portion. So it'd be minimal hours, we'd basically be hiring state contractors off a state bid, probably 3 or 4 separate ones. So it'll be minimal Public Works involvement. And we've done similar things with other projects and school projects. So it wouldn't be town forces, wouldn't be town equipment. We'd be acting as a GC, just carving out a piece of the process to get rid of the overhead and profit that a GC would charge you for.
Okay, so you would just act as GC but hire state contractors to do the work?
Correct.
And that would come into your budget would pay for that?
No,
that's
we would
coming out of
include it in our
It's
7.6, but
in the 7.6,
Yeah.
but we have not,
we would ask them to manage it to help
Right.
keep the cost down.
and
It's
if
part
the
of the value
savings,
engineering.
and if the savings that he can save us on that portion of it, that would be part of the money that we would like to give back to you. So we did not take away the money that DPW said that we could possibly save by using them as the general contractor for the parking lot. We have left that in there as an option for us to use later as a cost savings.
All right, and what kind of hours does that involve you being GC?
About 30 hours of overseeing the work, approximately.
Okay. And you'll just bring that in pursuant to your budget? You're not going to be adding to your budget because of this?
Correct.
Okay. But it's just other work you're not going to be able to get done during that?
So basically, one person, 30 hours, either Mr. Bartlett or
Okay.
Mr. Castanovich, as an in-kind service to the project.
Okay. And then the estimated debt service, we kind of didn't really spend a lot of time on this either, but.
What slide are you on?
Now,
We're going to go
well,
back
I'm
to
on-
that, Jim,
I'm
when
on-
we get the calculations. in
I'm on page
January.
16, it says at the bottom,
Thanks, Joe.
estimated debt service, and then it flows on, I think, to the next page, page 17, right? Did you do a calculation?
Oh, I
on
see,
one-
yeah. This,
Yes.
is this where you are?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
So you're estimating on if we bond $7.6 million, and if it comes in at 3% for 20 years, that debt service is going to cost us $510,000.
Round numbers, yep.
Round numbers. And your medium realistic numbers on the revenue portions will be 166.
Full disclosure on the cost and impact. It's, again, if I go to the revenue side, I believe there is upside beyond the 166.
Beyond the 166.
That's realistic. And on the very bottom of this slide 19, I did provide calculations, reverse
I saw that.
engineering, to
I saw
say
that,
what
yep.
it would
Yep.
cover. One of the topics that the building committee discussed was, if we didn't build this with an extra 2,000 square feet, so that we didn't attract the outings, and if we didn't get more rent from the concessionaire, it was kind of status quo, effectively doing a rehab on this building, we would have no incremental revenue to pay for this. Maybe we'd have some savings, right, on the first leg of the stool. But really, we wanted to, full disclosure, talk about what the potential debt service might look like, best guess, what the revenue impact might look like, best guess. But really, there was a lot of debate within the committee. When we talk about revenue, are we trying to cover the entire $500,000 nut? I don't think we could ever get there. Are we trying to cover the incremental cost associated with a new building that's bigger so that we can attract this more revenue? Maybe, I don't know, but at the end of the day, there is going to be a cost to the town. We know that there's going to be some offsetting revenue. It's really up to this board and the other bodies to determine whether it's the right spend for the town.
Yeah, these are all things we got to analyze.
Yeah.
Because, we're going through a thing, they just raised marina prices 5%. Now, they might be coming to us with a complete redo of the marina. We don't know how much that's going to cost.
Right.
But we're setting a precedent here by how we handle this.
Yeah, understand.
Do we raise marina rates to the point where that construction's covered by the bond? If
Yeah.
they decide to put in fancy piers and cement landing areas and all sorts of stuff? We're definitely setting a precedent on how we handle this one, so we're gonna have to kind of pay attention to what we're doing here.
And I think we're balancing on the edge.
Yeah.
We're trying to replace this building because doing nothing is not an
Yeah.
option, right?
We have all sorts of services in town.
But we're trying to do it
Some people might
responsibly
be
and-
boaters, some people might be golfers, some people
Right.
might use the beaches and want them, but we've got to kind of look at this, kind of
Yeah,
treat all the different users.
yeah,
It's just not everyone's using the same things and whatever, so.
yeah.
Can I reply?
Sure.
I want to add on top of that, because it's a good point. One of the things we don't have here in this economic analysis, we don't have a fully baked P&L as to what this looks like. We've just got this little carve-out, right? I'd really like to see, what does this look like between the Golf Commission and the Building Commission? The other thing that isn't factored in here, goes to Mr. Walsh's point, whether it be on the marina or here or other things, is, like it or not, now, Mr. Curley, you'd raised that the last 20 years we made money on this, which
Yep.
is fine, particularly the last 9 years.
Yep.
Like it or not, this is a business line this is a
count
business
on it,
service
sure.
that we currently provide. What's not factored into this economic analysis, I'm not trying to do the job for anybody, is the revenue retention. This is all about incremental revenue. If we don't do this here, what's the diminishing impact of this? And again, to your point, you might not get to the same point where it saves everything, and I certainly don't want to see a plug number, right?
Yeah.
But there is a wasting of this asset if you don't invest in it. It's a cost of doing business.
Yeah.
You're either in this business or you're not in this
Yeah.
business.
Yep.
And so it'd be really good to see, what does a P&L look like with this done
Yeah.
for the next number of years? And what does a P&L potentially look like if you don't do this
Yeah.
in the next 10 years?
So that's
And
what I
that's
was
the
gonna-
precedent that you'd set with the marina and everything?
That's what I was going to bring up. The risk of doing nothing, I mean, you will.
I thought we knew what the risk of doing up is, because don't we have a maintenance number here, approximately what it costs?
No,
No,
talking about revenue.
you're talking about revenue.
No,
No, you don't have a
what's the
revenue.
cost to maintain this building? Just keep it as it is. Like, what's it costing us every year to keep it? the
Well,
way
you'd
it is?
save $22,000 if you didn't do anything. That doesn't tell you, though, eventually, the concessionaires not gonna pay this rent.
Right. You
Because they
might go to
can't make any money.
22,000.
You lose rounds.
You lose rounds. You lose, now, I don't know what those numbers are, but I'm saying that's a factor into
Yeah.
the cost of being in this business,
Yeah.
period. And
And
every business has that,
yeah.
right?
And the rounds lost are going to be the non-resident rounds. Those are the high-yielding rounds. Those are
Correct.
the ones we got to try and preserve, because they are the ones that keep the surplus in
Why
place.
come here?
Why come here? If
Right.
I'm gonna pay the amount here,
Right.
I'm gonna pay it at Toshua Knowles, and at Toshua I can go in and have a beer and a hot dog in a clean environment
Yeah.
and all that, I'm gonna go there, right? I mean,
But haven't we lost that? I mean, the useful life of this building has been up for a while.
Yeah, we,
Any effect of that, we've lost it. We're
Well,
seeing
I-
it based on where we are now.
Well,
I think the
maybe,
improvement in the
maybe
golf
not.
course has offset that over the last
Yeah.
few years, but I
There-
think that's going to start to wane.
there are a
Right.
couple of things. The
We
one,
redid this building a little bit.
absolutely, and we
Right.
got, the town of Fairfield got very lucky that Karen, who is the current concessionaire, as a business investment, put about $200,000 into that wall, this beam work, that entire bar. None of this was here. So as bad as this building is, it is so much better today than what it was when they came in, what was it, 7 years ago? 8 years ago?
plus you invested in the golf course over the last.
And we were investing at the same time. Kieran does a tremendous dinner crowd on Fridays and Saturday nights. He's got a prime rib special on Friday nights, and he's busy all through the winter. And he's really created a community. If you come in here after a round of golf, the bar, it's hard to get a seat at the bar. And you've got activity here because there's a TV here, there. It's got golf on, it's got baseball on, it's got football on. The previous concessionaire had none of that. And I remember when I first started to play here when Mike Duke was the concessionaire, he had one tiny little TV in that corner. It was like a 19-inch. And he canceled his cable subscription and didn't get Yankee or Met or Jet or Giant games. And on the day of the Masters Sunday, where this year and years past, this place is packed because everyone's watching the tournament, people couldn't get out of here fast enough because they couldn't watch here with their friends, and it was the right environment. So Kieran's done a tremendous, given a tremendous asset to the town by revitalizing the restaurant. And I believe if the town reinvests in the clubhouse, it's just going to snowball on that.
In regards to the design that you supplied, the two bathrooms that are in the dining room and grill room, does one of them have a shower in it?
By code,
Like, oh,
yeah.
it's a handicap bathroom.
We tried to eliminate it, he wouldn't let us.
Why does it need a bath shower?
Code?
The building code requires in an assembly space, which this dining room is, that you have a family toilet, and it must provide the same amenities that are available in the primary toilets. So if you have a toilet and a sink, that family bathroom has a toilet and a sink. If you have a toilet, sink, and a shower, that family bathroom has to have a shower. The reason being is that if you have a handicapped child, and the parent wants to use that shower to bathe that child, because you offer that service to ambulatory people, you must by code provide that same equivalent service to the handicapped child or to handicapped individual.
Aren't those showers available in the restrooms?
But they're not part of the they're not part of the family toilet.
Right, because you
The
may
the
have
law,
a,
the law says you're allowed to go into a private toilet room with your son or daughter and give them service with a toilet, sink, or a shower because you offer those amenities elsewhere. If you got rid of the showers in the shower locker room, then you can get rid of the shower in the family bathroom. But you must provide the same fixtures per the plumbing
But I
code.
can't bring my daughter into the men's locker room and give her a shower.
Correct.
And I can't take her into the ladies' locker room if I have a handicapped daughter, but I can take her into that one.
So we've all seen the family bathrooms. This is now required because you have the showers elsewhere. That's the only reason the shower's in there.
So there's a unisex toilet that has the shower in it. And then what's the other bathroom? A men's or woman's room or a unisex?
It's a unisex. We just wanted a second bathroom to be adjacent to the dining and grill room.
Could is that enough for a restaurant that's gonna hold 120 people?
Correct. We run the plumbing calculations based on the building code. We're actually exceeding it significantly. So really, the code wants you to just add up all your fixtures. They don't care where in the building they're placed, as long as they're on the accessible route. We just have to meet the total criteria of plumbing fixtures, which this design exceeds.
and if the unisex bathrooms are occupied, it's, the walk to the locker rooms are not so far. It's about the equivalent of the bar to about the pro shop.
I
So-
can attest, that's a pretty long walk.
Yeah, you do have to plan
At
accordingly
your
at times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
and we went back and forth on that because that was part of the issue, was we wanted to make sure that bathrooms were outside of the dining space for the event people, so they didn't have to go to the locker room. So the best commonality that we came up with was the two there, and if they are occupied, then you'll have to go use the men's or women's room. But we didn't want to just have them in the locker room and have the one handicap, so we gave two outside the dining room, because as you see now, we don't have to go to the locker room to go to the bathroom. We just we didn't like the way it looked and felt, so we added the two bathrooms and squeezed them.
I'm sorry, where are we? Who's up still?
And we'll get that solar analysis.
Yeah, so just to be clear on that,
Yes.
I'm going to talk to Scott Thompson to understand exactly what the town has been doing. I think it's a no out-of-pocket in exchange for low PPA. So really, I think the analysis there is for the arbitrage between the PPA rate and the merchant rate forecast.
Yes, I'm not sure, but Joe, you guys always provide an analysis. This should be actually pretty simple for you guys to do, correct? I think it's actually something works under you, right? Who does all that?
Yeah, correct. So the way we purchase through power purchase agreement, so a vendor supplies the actual capital, and they get the credit of
The
CREC credits,
Yeah, the investment tax credit.
investment tax credit, and they get money from selling electricity. So that's why we're able to buy electricity at below market rate, whether it's 80% or 75 or 60% based on the project itself. That's how we're able to buy it without any capital investment, so we can do the same analysis for this building. So, Jim, I guess the question would be to you is do you want the analysis of the cart barn versus the parking lot?
I'd like to see
I would
what the energy savings dollars would be. I
Because-
guess it's the extra money.
Because if we could put the solar panels in the parking lot and then not build the cart barn, then we're saving on both ends.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, why wouldn't you put the same, like down at the rec center? Why would you put those
Well, that's-
same stanchions right all over the parking lot?
So I mentioned the different rates. If you're doing the stanchions, it's more of a capital investment. So it's more cost effective to put them on an existing roof as opposed to building something structural.
Why wouldn't we do it everywhere? Why wouldn't we do, I mean, you guys made sense of doing the power down at the stanchions that are down in the parking lot. Why wouldn't we turn them on top of the building? And then what I'd like to see is what revenue would we generate, I guess, from putting them on the cart barn, moving the cart barn over there versus the cost of the cart barn
Yeah.
And having them in the parking lot.
and in the parking lot.
Okay.
Okay.
I mean,
So,
because,
right.
because to some degree, some of those arguments you made for putting them down at the rec complex. In the wintertime, no snow on the cars. In
Yeah.
the summertime, the cars stay cooler.
Yeah,
And the high schools now also.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's no question, the committee definitely discussed utilizing as much solar as we could cover, and if that means the parking lot, great, and if it's the cart barn over there, so that
And the
we put
parking lot.
another, I don't know, 40 panels on there, and it pays, that justifies it, we
There's
would,
no additional cost on any of that stuff. The company comes in and they install the stanchions, right?
Correct.
but
I
I,
don't know why we wouldn't do it.
but I think there would be a cost, because we would spend another 5 to 6 to 700,000 to move the cart barn
I
there.
know, that's what I want to see. is-
Well, that's separate. He's talking about the parking lot.
Fair enough,
Yeah.
fair enough, and then
I want to see what's, on the, if you move the car barn for the cost of the $500,000 to $700,000.
Does it
to
pay for itself?
How
Yeah.
much does it pay for?
Yeah.
If not the whole thing, what percentage? Because you also said that there's a benefit for the flow of efficiency of the traffic.
Yeah.
And if that's going to cost us, for an example, you show me the net out-of-pocket cost, even with the savings, is $200,000, I think we have to look at it
Okay.
over 20 years to have a better product.
Okay, so let me ask you a question just
Sure.
to look forward on that. So because we won't be coming to you for funding approval in January, we would still come with you for the 7.6? And then with that analysis, you would increase our funding by the $200,000?
Maybe.
Is that the way it would work?
I would have it prepared for the Board of Selectmen and have them reviewed, but we're saying maybe.
Okay, I
Okay.
didn't know how the process would go, because
Yeah.
we're not changing the funding request based on that, but, okay.
I mean, if we're doing this, we have one shot at it.
No,
I mean,
I understand
and,
completely what
you
you're
know,
saying,
if
and I,
you can show me that, yes, on the parking lot, putting some of that money, would make some money there. On the cart barn, putting solar panels and moving it over there will get us this much money. We may be able to bridge the gap and end up with a better product for
It would definitely be a
40
better product.
40 or 50
yeah,
years.
we would love, we love the idea, we just, that's what we've
Yeah.
always wanted.
We were very
Just right.
reluctant to move it back, but it was a cost savings BE exercise, so.
And if you can get us that analysis sooner than later, I mean, not wait till January.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
no, you
everything,
start
and
considering.
everything we get, make sure the Board of Selectmen gets as well.
Yep.
Yes,
Yep.
All right.
Okay.
Jim, you done?
yes.
All right, Jim Brown. Jim Brown, his question was the same as mine. Fulsome P&L analysis.
Yep.
What does it look like without investment? What does it look like with investment? I'm not looking for a plug number, I'm looking for a realistic number
Yep.
as to what are we talking about here.
Fair enough.
All right. Ms. Leclerc?
Well, I think most of my questions have been covered, but I just want to repeat them a little bit. When we go to approve funding, I'd like to see as detailed, complete construction budget as you can come up with.
Okay.
And that can be updated as you progress along your project, so we can confirm that you're on track, or what's costing more or less, so we know ahead of time that there may be a problem.
Yep.
I'd also like to see a complete, like, revenue and income budget that they've talked about. You may
Okay.
need help from the Parks Department or the Golf Commission.
Okay.
And I want to see the analysis Jim's asking about for the cart barn, because I guess that was the one piece that seemed disappointing when we walked out there, and to hear that we were keeping the same floor and beams, and it seemed like we could do better.
Yeah. We would definitely like to if we can afford it, and if we can find a financial scenario that makes sense and you would support it, then we would too.
Great.
Okay?
Are you good, Mary?
I'm good.
Mr. DeWitt?
The P&L data for me is,
Okay.
Okay.
and everything else I've been asked. Thank you.
Mr. Becker?
Yeah, just, yeah, P&L, the solar, and then the rounds info that you had mentioned.
History.
And then the surplus, but Mr. Flynn's point, maybe only go back as far as you can get apples to apple, accurate information.
I'll give you what I have,
Yeah,
and
if
then
you-
the line items have unemployment, for example, and that
Yeah.
starts about 10 years ago. And you'll see, like bond amortization, that started I don't know,
Yeah.
12 years ago or something like, so
Yeah,
you'll
we
see
can-
it's zeros before that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, even taking a couple of years, because it would be curious to see a surplus. Like, I understand your situation.
Yep.
But otherwise,
Great.
Great, thank you.
Very nice job. Thank you for the work.
Thank you.
Thank you to committee for the work and for staying late on another night. Good luck with the rest of your presentations. We look forward to our answers to our questions.
Do you
And
mind
we'll
if
see you
I
when
list
you
them
come back.
back to you to make sure I didn't miss anything? Are you
We'll
okay?
take care of that after the fact.
Fair
We don't
enough.
need to do
Okay,
that here.
very good.
So, thank you very much. And we're going to take a 5-minute recess and come back. Why isn't he here? Do you have any idea?
No, I do not.
Mr. Mayor, where's the first selectman this evening?
I have no idea, sir.
He wasn't here at all for this, right?
Correct. He hasn't been coming to our meetings lately. And I know he hasn't been coming to the RTM meetings. Is there a reason why that's happening?
You have to ask him, I'm not.
All right, can we ask the first selectman to attend the next meeting, and our next meeting, which is next week?
Next week.
So we can
He's
discuss
got to
it.
attend anyway.
So, and I'm also, while we're here, so I don't waste time later, specifically requesting on our matter with regards to Smith Richardson, that he be there so we can address what happened in the selection before, in case we have any questions about that or the project.
I agree.
On the town side.
Mr. Mayor, can we make sure that we communicate that?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Michelangelo, so we were asking for an update on a cost update report on the pile cleanup. Before we get into that, there was an article in the newspaper that said that we are now dropping lawsuits. Us versus Julian and Julian versus us as regards to this matter and going to arbitration. That was new information. What is your level of involvement in that decision-making?
I was not involved in that decision-making at all.
So you have no information as to why the lawsuit was dropped?
No, I do not know.
Mr. Mayor, were you involved in that?
I was not involved in that, but I think there's mediation taking place.
Well, that's what I read in the paper, so. Why?
I've not been involved, I've not had any meetings with attorneys.
Is that a public mediation? Like, can the public attend that mediation?
I can find out, but I don't know.
Could you, here's what's, we're getting a lot of questions. I've gotten phone calls from several members, and I've received a couple of questions from people in the public, and we were caught very flat-footed, quite frankly, on this. I didn't know about it until I read it in the paper, and I think other members have said the same thing. And there's a whole lot of questions as to how this came about, what's going on, where this stands, why mediation. I was hoping the first selectman would be here so we could get some answers, because I didn't think Mr. Michelangelo was involved. I didn't know your level of involvement. And I don't think, I don't want to speak for him, but I haven't, in talking to the two other selectmen, I don't know their level of involvement in this either. So I'm at a loss. Do you have any?
No, I've been busy with other things, but that's not an excuse or anything, I just not been involved. It's not.
I'm not saying you have
Yeah,
that.
I talked to Stan, said, Stan, what's going on? So it's right, we're in mediation. I said, okay, well, everybody knows that, but it's just, there's been no in-depth conversations, so I don't have any knowledge.
Do we have other questions on this? Mrs. Marmion, did you know that this happened?
I didn't know. I mean, when was this, when did you?
There was
read
an
about this?
article the day after Thanksgiving
I haven't seen anything, so.
that both parties dropped the lawsuits, and they're going to, I believe they said binding arbitration / mediation,
Yeah, I'm not, I think it's mediation, but I'm not.
but it's binding. Whatever it is, they've agreed that,
That's what it said, yeah.
Which paper was it in?
it was in the Connecticut Post and the Fairfield Citizen. If you Google it right now, it'll come up, you'll see it. Just, Mr. Walsh.
At this point, not having the first selectman here or the town attorney, and having lots of questions to do with all of this, I think we should postpone this matter until our next meeting. And this way will give everybody an opportunity to request the first selectman and the town attorney to be present.
Yep.
So I don't want to waste Michelangelo's time and make him come back a second time and go through it all again.
Mr. Michelangelo, do you have the costs, by the way? Did you, is there,
The last update we provided was on September 21st. There has been no additional cost since then.
no legal costs?
I don't have the legal costs. From a Public Works perspective, no additional costs.
Mr. Mayor, do we have an update? Thank you, Mr. Michelangelo. Do we have an update?
There's been more legal costs, but not gathered that.
So we're not prepared to have this discussion anyway, even if it's just on the costs? Yeah.
I'd like to make the motion to postpone this until our next meeting in early December.
And can we add to that motion?
And ask that the first selectman and the town attorney be present, that we have all costs involved in any portion of this matter, at all costs, updated. Meaning that we had a number up to 800,000. Have that completely updated, that worksheet, so we have an idea of what the total costs are up to that day.
Do we have a second to that motion? We have Mr. DeWitt. I'm going to call that. All in favor of postponing this matter to the next meeting with the provisions that Mr. Walsh put in place? That's a unanimous vote. Mr. Michelangelo, our apologies, but we thought there was more information and we thought we'd have more people here.
No problem.
So,
Thanks
thank
for
you.
being here for the last matter.
Yeah,
because
worked out well.
So I don't think it was a complete waste.
Great.
So thank you for being here, so you understand what we're looking for.
Thank you.
So much, Joe.
Hey, Tom, just a
Yeah.
comment on that. That information we asked for, we can get in our packet, so we have it to read before the meeting?
Friday before?
Friday, yeah.
Friday.
The financial information on the pile. So if that's available on Friday, that'd be great. Based on what Mr. Michelangelo said, I'm assuming that the only incremental cost since our September update relates to legal fees, which I'm sure you can get by Friday.
Make the phone calls.
Yeah.
The money's not been spent, but you guys are sitting on, say, like, legal bills. Can we get a copy of those legal bills?
Well, we wouldn't be sitting on anything.
Well, I know sometimes, I know the process is sometimes the legal bills get sent into finance, and then Mike has to sign off on it.
They all get sent into finance.
Okay, but then, the approval to pay, sometimes it's done by the
The
first.
bills come to me.
Yeah.
The process, policy, bills come to my office, and then I route them based on who I think should sign them.
Yes.
Some of them are the assessor, some of them building, et cetera, right? And the Julian ones I just give to Stanton, and he usually gives them right back to me in a day, and then they go into the pay pile and get paid.
But if there's any not been paid that he hasn't signed off on, that he's sitting on.
Yeah, no, he is
as
not
of
sit-
that Friday, can you
That's
either
right.
enclose a
Yeah, I'll-
copy of those bills or work them into the number?
Yeah,
I just want
no.
to make sure that,
Yeah, no,
you know, Mr. Baldwin's bill was sitting there for months and months, and that was, you know, never being taken care of. So all I'm asking is for, in order
Yeah,
to
that-
have most accurate
yes.
financial information,
Yes.
any of the
Yes.
costs that we know of.
Yes, you're basing a request on prior experience.
Yes.
I understand.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go on to the town's financial position as of the end of the first quarter, which is September 30th. We have our standard schedule here. Remember, this is the first quarter of the year. So let's go through this. Go ahead, Mr. Mayor.
All right, first number is current and prior year tax levy and interest. There's a positive $475,000 there. That's comprised of 5 different categories. The net receivable that's in the tax collector compared to what was compared to the initial from the grand list when we set the budget is a $92,000 positive variance. The collection rate, which was set at I think 98.73, but I'm using 98.82 because remember we ended up really high last year, so it increased our 3-year average. We ended up in the 99 range for the first time. So that's 239,000 positive. We had fewer appeals than we anticipated, and we were fairly successful in the appeal process, so we have a $453,000 savings there. The senior tax relief came in at $309,000 savings for a positive on the current taxes of $1,093,000. We are lagging behind
based upon prior year averages and ratios on the prior year tax amount by $617,000. So that's the $475,000 positive that you see there.
Okay.
The investment income,
And that probably goes away later this,
I'm sorry, which one?
the investment income, right?
No, actually, you know, I tried to position that. We tried to make a lot of guesses, and actually, for the first quarter, just on the income side, we're up about $130,000 in income, but we have almost no mark-to-market. I tried to position us so we would not suffer mark-to-market. It's pretty hard not to have a mark-to-market when you have increasing interest rates. So this could get better. I mean, it depends. I mean, who knows what's going to happen?
Right.
So the building revenue, there's a house at the end of Sasko Hill Road. If you go down to the end where you go left or right, there's a big house there that some guy paid, I don't know, millions of dollars for that he's just ripping apart. And
Wait, is that the one that was the biggest house in town, the most
it's-
expensive one in town? At the very end, right
at the
by
very end, yeah. I don't know if it's the
They're
most
tearing that down.
expensive. Yeah, it's some person, a guy who bought it. He owns a community in some rich guy, some in his 30s, lives in California.
You talking about the Jack property?
No, I don't think it's not the.
It's not the Jack
I don't
property?
think it's
That's
the Jack
exactly what I
property.
was thinking.
I don't think it's the Jack property.
That's the
So I
one
don't
that's
know
right on
specifically.
the, it's right on the water.
Yeah. I'll follow up with an email on what exact property it is.
Okay.
But anyway, so it's, because I don't know which one is actually the Jack property. That's kind of weird, because I never really, because I pay a lot of attention to the taxes there. The reason I'd say it's not the Jack property, because if it was the Jack property, our prior year taxes wouldn't be
Right.
behind.
Right.
That's what I did.
Right.
But anyway, so the guy's doing a lot of renovation. He came in, and his permit check to building was $201,000. So on the work that this gentleman is doing there, and I imagine that number might actually increase over time, but Mr. Conley is not ready to commit to that yet. The next item is state aid.
And we knew that one was coming.
We knew that was coming. Other, $111,000. They're having increased permits in permit revenue and conservation.
I mean, other than the building revenue and the state aid, we can't get too excited on this stuff, because this is
Right.
going to ebb and flow over the next
Exactly.
few months.
The vacancy number is $875,000, and that's scattered among about 10 different
Do you have a hiring
departments.
freeze on, or is this just,
No.
it's just churn?
Most of it is just, like the police, for example, I think they're the highest. They're like, we have the police chief, we have a police captain, and then we're going to have it for a while. That all adds up to, it's about $220,000 is the potential savings there.
Is this an annualized number?
Yes.
Oh, okay, so we're never going to achieve this, because some of those positions will be filled.
Well, no, but it's annualized with targeted fill dates.
Oh, okay, okay, so it's not annual,
So
okay.
do you feel pretty confident that that number will remain consistent throughout the year based on your targeting, unless let's say, for example, the chief search drags on for an extra month or two?
Yeah, well, I'm actually in charge of the chief search, so it won't drag on.
Where are the vacancies other than police? or-
There's ECC, there's a vacancy there. They actually, they maintain a vacancy intentionally.
Who does, I'm sorry?
The ECC.
Okay.
Fire department, there's the vacancy there is, they have a savings from Kessler retirement. Health department has a secretary position that they're recruiting for. HR, Eileen retired. We're filling that position with a part-time position for a few months to see to evaluate whether we need a full-timer or a part-timer there. So there's savings with the Eileen position. IT, the two guys retired, Cyril and Steve, and we're recruiting for those positions. They have been empty, well, they retired July 1, so they've been empty. We're recruiting, and I'm not quite to the point of going out for a headhunter, but we might get there. But
It's a tough market for it.
yeah. There's some turnover and some churn in the library. I think there's like about $100,000 of potential savings in the library right now. Not potential, but what we anticipate. Parks has the youth coordinator is open. DPW just churn, we look about $115,000 for that. And as you may know, in purchasing, Phil took the purchasing director job for Mr. Timniak in
I didn't know that.
Stratford.
Who did?
So we lost our purchasing director?
Right, we lost one of our two purchasing staff. Not our director.
Not a director.
Oh.
The-
I'm gonna say.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Under it, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's open. So yeah, so these are real numbers. I mean, we've been refining this process, last year.
What is the 96?
Pardon?
What is the 96 underneath the vacancy?
Oh, the 96 is actually the offsets of the vacancies. That's ECC and DPW overtime.
Okay. So we'll continue to monitor this.
Yeah. So-
Bob, what's going on with the library?
Oh,
With the flooding you're talking about?
I'm not technical enough to fully understand this stuff.
You don't need to
But-
tell
but-
us,
But
yeah.
you, apparently, you turn off your HVAC water supply, and some people, some people keep it under pressure, and some people don't keep it under pressure during the winter season, right? We keep the HVAC water supply pressurized. That keeps the O-rings moist and doesn't dry out. Otherwise, you have to do preventive maintenance when you put it back on and blah, 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 blah. Anyway, it blew up. It blew through the whole thing.
The pressure blew?
No, the pressure,
Just the pressure.
just the pressure just blew. I don't know why.
They gotta watch.
So is there a lot of water damage?
Yeah, it's yeah, library's closed.
Well, I know that, but
Yeah,
I
it'd be
mean, how
closed
much
for a
is the
few days.
damage? I mean, it sounds like it's got to be relatively significant, given.
Yeah, it's significant damage. Insurance company's in. We're covered. It's going to cost us $100,000. I think our coverage is $100,000 deductible. But the total damage, I didn't meet with there was a meeting, but I had some other things going on today with the insurance people today. So I think they have a handle on what the amount is going to be, but I don't know that number.
And the building is closed, why specifically?
Because the fire department has some concern about safety because of the fire sprinklers.
Oh, are
and
they
all
not
this
able
kind
to
of
be-
stuff, not
they
being
can't
not-
get the
right,
water?
Right, so it's like, there's two options. Option one is to spend fixing some stuff, kind of half-fix, and then repair repair the damage while the library's open, after it's closed a few days, or keep the library closed and try to get it
Have you
fixed.
seen the damage?
No, I haven't gone over there, but I've had meetings, and I've talked to people that have been there. Apparently, it's pretty,
significant.
yeah, significant,
We're second floor?
yeah. So, and it came through the ceiling. So basically, yeah, we're using, we had to make, we're considering it an emergency, so the insurance company is going to pay the bills, so we don't have to go out to bids. That way we get it done faster.
Are there any other questions on the town's financial position right now? Any other follow-ups? Mr. Mayor, thank you. It's been a long evening. I hope you're feeling
I have
better.
another comment.
Yes.
I have never in my life been in a bar this long without a drink.
Thank you for that.
Somehow, I believe it. All right. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Everybody, thank you for a late night, some very good discussion. I appreciate it. Do I have a motion? Mrs. Ezra, seconded by Mr. Walsh. All in favor of adjournment?
Aye.
All right. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next week.
Thank you. Founding fathers, I'm sure they know.
That's all they meant.
Get that light out of my face.
Should leave here, it's fine, because.
But I'm not wearing a wig.
Exactly, no.
Are you?
Yeah.